Everyone, I'm calling the meeting to order of March 6th, 2018. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Sylvia.
Mayor Weislittle.
Here.
Council President Garland.
Here.
Councilor Kuiper. Here. Councilor Young. Here. Councilor Browse.
Here.
Councilor Griffin.
Here.
Councilor Rosner.
Here.
Thank you.
Next item is approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. Now we're moving on to the consent agenda, and I will read these items. Item A in paragraph 5, consent agendas, approval of the February 20, 2018 City Council meeting minutes. Item B, Resolution 2018-017, reappointing Bob Silverforb to the Sherwood Police Advisory Board. Item C, Resolution 2018-018, reappointing Chris West to the Sherwood Police Advisory Board. Item D, Resolution 2018-019, reappointing Diane Foster to the Sherwood Police Advisory Board. Item E, Resolution 2018-020, reappointing Lori Swinkley to the Sherwood Police Advisory Board. Item F, Resolution 2018-021, reappointing Rich Miller to the Sherwood Police Advisory Board. Item G, Resolution 2018-022, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with 3J Consulting to prepare a community vision for the comprehensive plan update and prepare a comprehensive plan integration strategy. And item H, Resolution 2018-023, authorizing staff to apply for a local government grant from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department for the construction of a skate park, repealing and replacing Resolution 2018-016.
Yeah, Mayor?
Yes?
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm not sure if I have to make a motion to do this or not, but I'd like to suggest that we move item G to after the March 20th work session, where we're going to talk about the Sherwood West UGB expansion. I think it deserves some conversation with the full council.
Any other council comments?
Could we have Julia, if you wouldn't mind, explaining a little bit about the resolution and what we're voting on? Is that how, or Joe?
Actually, I'm going to ask that maybe you just remove this item from consent and then put it on later for tonight, maybe to talk about a little bit more rather than talking about it right now in consent.
Should be pulled off consent.
It should be pulled off consent to talk further later in this.
We can do that with a motion to do that.
You can basically make a motion.
Would you do that, please?
Yeah, I move that we move item G, resolution 2018-022, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with 3J Consulting to prepare a community vision for the comprehensive plan update off the consent agenda.
My recommendation is to move it after your public hearing.
And move it into regular session after the public hearing.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And now you can make a motion for the remaining portion of your consent.
Can I have such a motion?
Approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All items other than item G are hereby approved. Next item is citizen comments. Sylvia, do you have a list?
Not Mayor.
None? Okay. We have a request from Chen Houghton. If you would please come forward.
Oh, it's for the hearing.
Hearing?
It's for denial.
Oh. You can come during, no, you can come during the hearing. This is for non-agenda items.
Okay.
You can come up during the hearing for that item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're having procedural issues tonight.
Moving on to item 7. We are fortunate to have an Eagle Scout with us tonight, and we would like to recognize Lee M. Whitmore. And if you would come up, please, we would like to learn more about your project and celebrate with you in the fact that it sounds like it's done. Please explain it for us.
So for my project, was over at the American Legion next door. We went over as a group with the rest of my troop and a couple of other volunteers, and we made a circular stone patio out back in their backyard. So it took a few days to get all of the materials ready and getting the area set up to actually put the patio in. But we ended up putting a gravel basing and a sand overlay over the top of that, flattened it out, and then used a circular stone design to make a nice little standing area for outside.
Wow. Any questions or comments? Please.
How did you decide on that project?
My family has worked closely with the American Legion before, helping out with several different volunteer opportunities. And while looking for opportunities to do an Eagle Scout project, Brian Berryhill had a recommendation because this has been a project that they've been wanting to do for a while, but haven't had anybody had the chance to do it just yet.
Did you have several assistants help with that?
Yes. I had a few different volunteers that were there that day who had come to help, but then I also recruited a few other of the kids from my troop to come help.
And you mind me asking what grade you're in?
I'm a junior.
So you're actually finishing your Eagle Scout project somewhat earlier than typical, aren't you?
Yes.
Usually, so kudos to you. I know it takes a lot of effort just to get to the point where you can actually start thinking about doing a Eagle Scout project. So excellent for finishing it off a full year early. That's great.
Just wondering if you had the materials, if they were donated?
No, the Legion volunteered to pay for all of the materials that we
Okay.
needed.
Great. Good job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add congratulations on getting to this point. I was a Boy Scout myself. I barely made it past tenderfoot, so, and that was difficult for me, so congrats on making it to Eagle Scout.
Thank you.
Our next item, 7B, is a proclamation, and the title of it is National Community Development Week, April 2nd to the 6th, 2018. Whereas the week of April 2 to 6, 2018 has been designated as a National Community Development Week by the National Community Development Association to celebrate the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program and the Home Investment Partnership HOME program, and whereas the CDBG program provides annual funding and flexibility to local communities to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing a suitable living environment and economic opportunities to low and moderate income people. And whereas the Home Investment Partnerships Home Program provides funding to local communities to create decent, safe, affordable housing opportunities for low-income persons. Nationally, over 1 million units of affordable housing have been completed using home funds. And whereas over the program's history, our community has received a total of $2,228,482 in CDBG funds. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Sherwood designates the week of April 2nd through April 6th, 2018, as National Community Development Week in support of these two valuable programs that have made tremendous contributions to the viability of the housing stock, infrastructure, public services, and economic vitality of our community. Be it further resolved that this community urges Congress and the administration to recognize the outstanding work being done locally and nationally by the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Investment Partnerships Program by supporting increased funding for both programs in fiscal year 2019. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Sherwood, Oregon, to be affixed on this day, March 6th, 2018. And that's it. And our next item is introduction of a new city employee.
So I'm going to invite Adrian, our library director, to come up with our newest employee that we want to introduce. While they're coming up, just for the crowd here and at home, we try to have new employees introduced to the council shortly before their first month or two. So you have a name and a face, and it's an opportunity. A lot of the library staff don't come to council meetings very often, so this may be the one and only time she comes. So with that, I'll have Adrian introduce our newest employee. Go ahead.
Thank you and good evening. I am delighted to introduce you to Rachel Seltz. Rachel started on February 5th, and you may recall we had a vacancy at the library for a while. We were working on a small reorganization. This new position, slightly different job description, was part of that reorganization, all within the budget. And it was caused when Mary Madeline retired. Mary had been with us for 17 years and was mostly behind the scenes. Some of you may have heard her name. So we are delighted that Rachel is here. She's going to tell you a little bit about what she's working on and her experience.
Well, thanks, Adrian, and thank you all for the opportunity to be introduced here tonight. So I am the new technical services librarian at the library, and that means I am responsible for acquisitions and cataloging. I'm the liaison for the library's vendors. I place the orders for the new items, the books and the DVDs and the audiobooks and more. And once those items get into the library, I catalog them so that they can be shelved properly and our patrons and staff can find them and discover them when they're searching the catalog. I also think about ways to reorganize the library so that it best serves our patrons as they're moving through the library and its collections. And I think about interesting new types of items that we could add to the library's collections that would benefit our patrons. Before I came here to Sherwood, I was a librarian for 2 years over at Tigard, so neighboring. And before I moved here to beautiful Oregon, I was living in Michigan. And I went to the University of Michigan to get my bachelor's and master's degree.
She's looking at Josh, because that's his another Wolverine.
Yes, and so it's really very nice to be part of the Sherwood team. I'm very glad to be here. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much again for your time.
Any questions?
Are you in charge of ordering science fiction?
Well, so other librarians, actually at Tigard I did order that collection, but other librarians, they actually decide on what they want to add, and then I place the orders and get them into the building. Yes.
Thank you.
Good taste.
Thank you. Well, welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Our next items are those in number 8, public hearings. We'll start with the first one. Ordinance 2018-002, approving annexation to the city of 84.7 acres, including right-of-way, comprised of 4 tax lots within the Sherwood High School concept plan area, and declaring an emergency. Sylvia?
Mayor and Council, for this evening, we'll have 3 items for public hearing. Each item will have a separate public hearing statement. So this statement applies to the item that the mayor has addressed. So the Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on Ordinance 2018-002, approving annexation to the city of Sherwood of 84.7 acres, including right-of-way, comprised of 4 tax lots within the Sherwood High School concept plan, and declaring an emergency. The hearing this evening will be conducted as follows: to hear a staff report, which is approximately 15 minutes, questions, if any, by the City Council for staff, receive any written testimony. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and the time will be limited as follows. The applicant will receive 30 minutes, split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application, 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application, 4 minutes each. Rebuttal from the applicant for the remainder of the 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. No other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. Final comments by staff, 15 minutes. Questions of council, if any, for staff, and then discussion by the council. This is the first hearing before the council on this application. Generally, the council will hold 2 hearings prior to making a decision. A second hearing on this application is currently scheduled for the following city council meeting, which is on the 20th of March. However, in accordance to the city charter, council reserves the right to make a decision at the closing of this hearing by unanimous vote of all sitting council members. If you wish to speak, please fill out a testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and please speak clearly into the microphone. In reaching a decision on the application, the council must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations and any other applicable law. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. The testimony and evidence must address those criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the council, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval with enough detail to allow the council to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I would like to ask the members of the council to disclose any ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. At the conclusion of the council's comments, I will ask the question to the audience if the audience wishes to challenge any of the council members. So at this time, are there any comments from the council? No? Thank you. For the members of the audience, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to challenge? No, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, fellow council members. Matt Strait tonight, presenting for staff. The project site is located within the Sherwood West Preliminary Concept Plan area. More specifically, it is westerly of Elwert and northerly of Kruger Road. The project site consists of 4 parcels totaling approximately 82 acres. The current zoning on the site is agricultural and forest 20-acre minimum in unincorporated Washington County. We were previously before the City Council explaining the 4 different steps that are required for this high school application to move forward, high school project to move forward rather. And those 4 different steps for the high school are a UGB expansion, the plan amendments that are required to add it to our comprehensive plan and to apply zoning. Those two have both already been completed. The third step would be the annexation of the property into the city, and the fourth step would be a use permit in the form of a conditional use permit or a site plan. Again, the item before you tonight is the annexation, number 3. An annexation has 3 different levels of criteria. It has state, regional, and local, and we're going to go through each of those fairly quickly. The annexation before you tonight is proposing a method permitted by SB 1573, which requires a number of things that are listed here on the screen. The first one is 100% ownership of the area coming into the city has to agree to the application and agree to the petition for the annexation. The state criteria also require the property to be within the UGB and to be contiguous to the city. As this slide shows, the UGB was revised by Metro to include the site in 2017 and is contiguous to the city. State criteria also require the area to be subject to a comprehensive plan, and it requires that the site conforms to the city zoning. The adoption of the plan amendment number 1702 by the City Council a couple of months ago added the area to the comprehensive plan, specifically Chapter 8 of the comprehensive plan, and it applied zoning to the property that will take effect upon an annexation. At the regional level, the Metro Code requires the site to be part of an urban planning area agreement. It requires agreements with CWS and TVFNR, and it requires the site to be subject to a facility plan. The previous adoption of the Title 11 concept plan addressed each one of these concerns, and this annexation area is completely within that Title 11 Sherwood High School concept plan area. Lastly, at the local level, there is no code criteria for an annexation. The criteria for annexation in this city comes from our comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan requires a number of things, the first of which is that development must be encouraged to happen first within the city, and then it can go outside the city. The applicant prepared a number of different alternative analysis studies trying to fit this high school within the city and couldn't find a location that met their criteria, so they had to go just outside the city. The comprehensive plan also requires preservation of natural features, it requires access, and it requires a transition between rural and urban uses. Again, all of these were fully addressed in the Title 11 concept plan that was previously approved and the transportation planning rule traffic study that went along with that previous Title 11 concept plan. The annexation that's being proposed tonight conforms to all of these and actually implements those documents. Before I go into my staff recommendation, I wanted to cover a couple of things that I wanted to clarify in the staff report. And on top of that, we handed out some additional materials to the City Council that are coming down right now. And there's additional copies of these at the back of the room, should any audience member wish to see these as well. First, I wanted to clarify a couple of things from the staff report itself. The staff report and the draft ordinance made reference to the Metro ordinance that brought the UGB area, it expanded the UGB area for the high school, and it incorrectly referenced the wrong Metro ordinance number. And so we have fixed that in the staff report, and on the top of the handout that you just got is a revised version of the ordinance. This ordinance is all identical to the previous one that was in the staff report, except for the fourth whereas, which I'll read out loud right now. It simply revised the ordinance number. Whereas the Sherwood High School concept plan area, which includes the territory proposed to be annexed, was brought into the urban growth boundary in 2017 by Metro via Ordinance 17-1406. And then it goes on to the rest. In addition, we handed out a couple of other items to you. These are intended to be additions to the exhibits for our staff report analysis. And so we carried on that numbering as we go into these items. The first one we've handed out to you was some additional details on the ownership of the project. As we're about to talk about, some people were calling that into question, and so we wanted to put some more documents into the record that discusses that. So we handed out to you 3 different orders confirming immediate possession of the property. And that's what gives the legal authority for the school to put in an application on the property. We also handed out a document that came in with the application materials that was certified by the county that certified the owners of the property as being the school. The exhibits F and G that are in front of you are two different letters that came from two attorneys that are representing people who own the property where the school is proposing to go. Both of those attorneys are contending that the applicants don't have the legal authority to move forward because they don't have legal ownership of the property. This was brought to the attention of our city attorney, and our city attorney and staff went through the applications, we went through the letters, we went through the materials that are in front of you, and we believe that the applicants have the legal authority to move forward with the application in front of you tonight. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council hold a public hearing and do a first and second reading in one night, which would require a unanimous vote, and then adopt the ordinance approving the annexation and declaring an emergency so it would take effect right away. This concludes staff's presentation. Myself and the applicants are available for any questions you might have.
Questions, council? Thank you. Any discussion?
Mayor, at this time, it would be to open the public hearing and receive testimony from the applicant.
Public hearing is now opened.
We'll wait till it's done.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time. Brad Kilby. My address is 205 Southeast Spokane Street, Portland, Oregon 97202, and I am the consulting planner representing the Sherwood School District. Just have a few quick things. I just want to first thank staff. We reiterate what they say and support their recommendation to you, and I'll provide further findings that I think support the assertion that the school district is the owner of the property. So let's get this going. Maybe. It's not showing.
Maybe you have to enter presentation mode down there. And then...
Resume slideshow. The old one?
Yeah, go ahead and close it. Close them all, just open yours.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So as you can see here, the subject property that we're going to be talking about is approximately 84.7 acres, just located just west of the city of Sherwood in the Sherwood West Preliminary Concept Plan. And it includes the adjacent right-of-way necessary to extend utilities and services to the site upon development. Our proposal is to annex 4 parcels totaling that 84.7 and the adjacent rights-of-way into the city. We assert that under Senate Bill 1573 we have that right, and we're asking for you for that for a vote in response.
Could you pull the microphone a little bit up closer?
Sure. Sorry. So the property, we're asking that you support our request, and the properties owned by the school district include these tax lots here. The Sherwood School District has asserted ownership by immediate possession of 10 acres that is tax lot 2 South 236-00201, and then the rest of them have the same Washington County tax map number, and then the tax lots are 207, which is 23.74, which has a general judgment signed by a judge asserting that the school district has ownership of the property, and that's 17 CV 18332. And then tax lot 200 is also under a stipulated judgment by a judge, and in that case is 17 CV 18451. And then, of course, tax lot 206 is we are in contract negotiations to purchase that property from the city. The properties are these 4 properties right here, located at the intersection of Kruger and Elwert, and then south of Haiti Road. And project background, as you all know, that the voters approved a bond measure to construct a new high school in November 2016. We brought it into the UGB in August of 2017. You, the council, approved the refinement plan and the refinements to the preliminary concept plan in December of 2017. And then here's our annexation hearing. How we see it moving forward is a conditional use and site plan review sometime in the spring of this year, followed by construction in the fall of 2018 through summer 2020. Our hope is to begin construction as early as June 15th, and then we'd be opening the school in the fall of 2020. Senate Bill 1573 requires 100% of the property owners within the territory proposed for annexation sign a petition. The city requires that you sign a petition. Within Oregon law, landowner is, I could say, defined in various different locations, but I mean, for the purposes of the city of Sherwood requires a petition for annexation that has to be signed by the property owners as verified by Washington County assessors. And with respect to that, ORS 198770 requires that the method of determining validity of landowner signatures. So this is what the county has to do in order to validify those signatures. In examining a petition required or permitted to be signed by landowners, the county assessor shall disregard the signature of a person not shown as owner on the last equalized assessment roll unless prior to certification the county assessor is furnished with written evidence satisfactory to the county assessor that the signer is a legal representative of the owner, is entitled to be shown as owner of land on the next assessment roll, is a purchaser or of land under a written agreement of sale, or is authorized to sign for and on behalf of any public agency owning the land. If a person signing a petition as a landowner appears as owner on the last equalized assessment roll, which the school district is shown as having title through immediate possession and those stipulated judgments, but is shown thereon as a partner, tenant in common, or tenant by the entirety, which it is not, it is shown as the owner, the signature of the person signing shall be counted as if all other owners as shown on the roll of the same parcel of land had signed. So you have 2 letters before you from 2 attorneys arguing that the school district is not the legal owner of the property. We assert that it is. We've provided you 2 orders and a stipulated general judgment and the orders from a judge as opposed to the 2 attorneys. So we assert that we do have legal ownership and that you do have the right to act on this petition as requested. It requires the property to be located within the UGB. It was brought into the UGB this year, or last year, I'm sorry. It requires the territory to be subject to an acknowledged comprehensive plan of the city. That was in December of last year. It requires at least 1 lot parcel within the territory to be contiguous to the city limits. We have 2 parcels that are separated just by a right-of-way, Elbert Road, from the city limits, the existing city limits, and requires conformance to all other requirements of the city ordinances. We've gone through the Title 11 concept plan to ensure that we comply with those standards and those ordinances and your comprehensive plan. We, in fact, amended the comprehensive plan, Chapter 8, to assure that this area and its refinement plan was acknowledged by the city. And it allows the area to be included in the annexation territory. It allows that additional area in order for us to extend the infrastructure. So that's why we have requested that the adjacent rights of way be included. On behalf of the Sherwood School District, I am here to ask for your vote and request that the city approve the annexation as requested. And thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm available. Thank you. I would, one more thing, I guess I would add that I do have the 2 copies of the I have a stipulated general judgment and the order confirming immediate possession, which I believe that Mr. Straight has already provided to you, and I'll provide those to you as well. I do not have the stipulated general judgment for one of the properties. I just don't have it. I didn't have it in my possession at the time that I was heading out here, so I will find that and make sure that it's entered into the record.
So can I ask a question of maybe of Brad, but also of Josh, kind of about the legality of, we've got the order that you presented that shows the signatures of Jim Rose and Joe showing ownership of the 4 parcels. And we've got the letters from the attorneys saying we don't agree with the ownership matter. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm hoping, why do we have that discrepancy? How does that work?
Well, I'll take a stab at it and just say that attorneys are going to always represent the their client's best interest. So whoever's paying their bill is who they're going to represent. And so certainly their job is to assert that we don't have the ownership. But the county has signed and certified that we are in fact the owners of the property.
So as far as legal documentation goes, this order is at this time the superseding document that shows ownership of the land? Or the penultimate, I'm looking for a big word here. Does this show who owns the land?
So I think just to kind of jump off of what Brad was saying, I think it's also probably fair to say that Senate Bill 1573 didn't really contemplate this question of what happens, who's the owner when you're in this stage of condemnation proceedings. And so obviously the attorneys for the property owners are going to argue that the previous property owners are going to argue that their clients are the owners, and school district's attorneys are going to argue that they are the owner. And on balance, I think the school district has a good argument that they are the owner, and the county assessor's office has certified that they are the owners. And so that's the document that I would focus on.
Okay.
Personally would be the county assessor's certification that they're the owners.
So moving forward tonight, and if we are to take this ownership then as shown here that the Sherwood School District owns the 3 parcels, the city owns the 1, risks to the city or negative impacts down the line? Can you predict?
The major risk would be an appeal of the decision by the attorneys who have submitted the letters to you. The impact on the city would be minimal. The school district has indicated that they would defend that case if there were an appeal, so the city's not going to be on the hook for my time or an outside attorney's fees to defend that case.
And unfortunately, our attorney wasn't able to make it tonight, so.
But I did speak to her today.
Okay. And I guess another question that's getting into the prediction game is there a typical time frame for these type of legal appeals to move forward? Is that tough to estimate? If the landowners were to appeal, the Sherwood School District attorneys were to, fight that in court, do we know what that time frame might look like?
It could be anywhere from, at the short end, a few months to, depending on how many times it's appealed, those things can go on for years. But realistically, it seems that the way this will probably be resolved is through the finalization of the pending condemnation cases.
And if your decision was to be appealed, they would have 21 days from the day that you make your decision to appeal that to LUBA. And then LUBA isn't really held to any timeline, but we would work aggressively towards resolving the issue. We have an interest in moving the children in 2020, so.
All right, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Next.
Mayor and Council, I have no other sheets that were submitted for a testimony.
Oh. Discussion, Council?
So at this time, maybe you could close the public hearing since we don't have any other applicants to speak, and then you can have your deliberation and decide how council wants to proceed.
Public hearing is now closed. Council, discussion?
I guess I would just add, in the interest of keeping our partner agency, the school district, on schedule, my position is we move forward and to a vote.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with the answers I received from Josh and from Brad Kilby as far as certainly any kind of potential risk to the school, or I'm sorry, to the city, and trusting that the school district is going to handle this. And much to Councilor Rosner's point, I'd like to move this forward as swiftly as possible with the intended planning for the 2020 launch of the high school. So I have no objections at this point.
Can we have a motion?
Yes, we do have a motion here.
And just to clarify, we do have a amended ordinance, so your motion you'll add the words as amended.
Right, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, so I move that we read, caption, and adopt ordinance 2018-002, approving the annexation to the city of Sherwood. Do I read the entire thing? Of 84 acres, including right-of-way, comprised of 4 tax lots within the Sherwood's high school concept plan area, and declaring an emergency as amended to include Metro via ordinance 17-1406.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Just as an individual.
Excuse me. Roll call.
Roll call, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Ordinance 2018-002, approving the annexation to the city of Sherwood of 84.7 acres, including right-of-way, comprised of 4 tax lots within the Sherwood High School concept plan area, and declaring an emergency. Councilor Rosner?
Aye.
Councilor Griffin?
Aye.
Councilor Browse?
Aye.
Councilor Young?
Aye.
Councilor Kuiper?
Aye.
Council President Garland?
Aye.
Mayor Weislogle?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion is carried. Approved. Next item, item B, ordinance 2018-003, adopting minor amendments to the City of Sherwood's 2014 Transportation System Plan, Volume 1 and 2, and to the Zoning and Community Development Code, Chapter 16.106, Transportation Facilities.
And Mayor and Council, if I may, before you get the staff report, I need to hear read the public hearing statement for this item. The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on ordinance 2018-003, adopting minor amendments to the City of Sherwood's 2014 Transportation System Plan, Volume 1 and 2, and to the Zoning and Community Development Code, Chapter 16.106, Transportation Facilities. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows: to hear a staff report, questions, if any, by the City Council to staff, receive any written testimony. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and the time will be limited to 4 minutes per person. Any interested person may present testimony. We will then close the public hearing. No further comments will be heard from the public. Final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the council, followed by discussion by the council. This is the first hearing before the City Council on this item. Generally, the council will hold 2 hearings prior to making a decision. A second hearing on this item is currently scheduled for March the 20th, which is the next council meeting. However, in accordance with the Sherwood City Charter, council reserves the right to make a decision at the closing of this hearing by a unanimous vote of all sitting council members. If you wish to speak, please fill out a testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those people wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and please speak clearly into the microphone. In reaching a decision on this item, the council may be required to consider whether the matter meets relevant approval criteria and any other applicable law. If applicable, those criteria are identified in the staff report, and testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So good evening, Council. I'm Erica Palmer, Planning Manager. And before you tonight are proposed minor amendments to the city's transportation plan that had been recommended to you for approval by the Sherwood Planning Commission. So just a brief overview, what is the purpose of the TSP? The TSP is basically a roadmap. It's a long-term vision for the Sherwood transportation system, and it includes strategies and improvements for projects for all modes of travel, including auto, ped, bike, and transit. So this plan needs to be consistent with local, regional, and state plans. So this slide defines the required findings for plan amendments, which are located in the Sherwood Development Code as well as in the comprehensive plan. So the text and map amendments need to be consistent with the city's comp plan and all applicable state regulations, including the transportation planning rule. The proposed amendments are twofold tonight. First, they provide for consistency within the city's TSP documents and consistency within the zoning code. Currently, there are maps in the TSP that are not consistent and do not show the same information. Figure 17 in the city's TSP, which is the street functional classification map, identifies Brookman Road as an arterial. Two other maps in the plan are not consistent with this figure, and we'll go over those figures here in the next couple of slides. Secondly, the proposed amendments will provide consistency with Washington County's transportation plan. Both the comprehensive plan policies and statewide planning goals state that all local plans need to be consistent with local, regional, and state plans. So the proposed amendments ensure that the city's TSP is consistent with Washington County's TSP. This is figure 17 in the city's adopted TSP. This is the street functional classification map, and this map classifies Brookman Road as an arterial. And this map, currently as adopted, is consistent with the Washington County's TSP. Figure 1, this is the first proposed amendment, and as you can see here on this slide, Brookman Road is shown as a collector. It's all blue. So with the proposed amendment, it would make it consistent with the first figure that was shown and make it shown as a arterial. This is figure 11 in the existing TSP. And once again, Brookman Road is inconsistent. Half of it on the western edge is shown as an arterial, and then it moves into a collector status, that blue line. So our next slide is going to show how we've amended it, and once again, it shows that road as being as an arterial the entire way. There are some project tables within the TSP, and the project title for number D5, the proposed amendment removes the three words three-lane collector from the project title. Note that this amendment does not change any of the project details for the proposed improvements to Brookman Road. So those stayed the same. And those proposed improvements include a three-lane road, 2 lanes, 1 turn lane, and then reserving additional right-of-way if that road is ever needed if that right-of-way is ever needed for future expansion. So this figure right here, this is a new figure. Bob Galati, our city engineer, wanted to include this new map. It was included in our previous TSP, but it was left out in 2015 when the TSP was, really went through the whole code amendment process. So this map right here just shows where streets and right-of-way are planned for more than 2 lanes. This proposed amendment right here is to our zoning code, in particular chapter 16, 106, transportation facilities. And we're just making a minor edit to change figure 15 to figure 17 so that everything's consistent. So staff recommendation tonight is to hold the public hearing and approve ordinance 2018-003 adopting the minor amendments to the city's of Sherwood's 2014 Transportation Plan, Volume 1 and 2, and to the Zoning and Community Development Code, Chapter 16.106, Transportation Facilities. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions, Council?
I have
Please.
questions. Oh, sorry. So just for the benefit of the public, could you describe the difference between a collector and an arterial?
Mm-hmm. So an arterial basically is could be a larger facility, and it usually goes from one major facility such as Highway 99 out to another arterial. A collector serves minor local roads. No.
I do the analogy of streams. If you think of a tributary versus a creek versus the Columbia River, the Columbia River would be an arterial, rivers flowing into the Columbia would be a collector. And then tributaries would be local streets. That's kind of a better way for people to visualize. But Sunset Boulevard is a arterial road. Tualatin Sherwood Road is an arterial road. So they're different sizes, but the idea is that a collector is collecting local traffic and bringing it to the arterial system.
I think the map showed Langer is a collector. Is that right? I think that's what it showed in blue.
And then Tonkin is shown in blue, which would be an arterial, right?
Blue is collector.
Blue, I'm sorry, collector. Okay.
Red is arterial.
Thank you.
So yeah, it looks like Oregon
Apologize.
Street just out
Yeah.
here is a collector. So just for reference.
And if I understand this correctly, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, we're aligning with the counties.
That is correct.
Right,
So
and
Washington County, in their transportation plan, Brookman Road is shown as an arterial.
And county technically has jurisdiction over these roads, and that's why we're doing that alignment. Could you, so we have received a couple of emails, concerned citizens around, establishing Brookman as a 5-lane arterial. Could you talk about the timeframes that Washington County thinks about in terms of that actually happening to those roads? Because I can't imagine they're going to go out tomorrow and approve a project to make that all 5 lanes through there.
Right, so that is really a long-term vision. I think, actually right now, the city, we're looking at going after some grant funding to do some refinement work on land use and transportation within the Brookman area. So remember, just because it's in a plan doesn't mean it can't change in the future. So really, the arterial is a long-term vision, but with future refinements down the road, it could change.
Yeah, and our understanding in talking with the county is Brookman is looking to develop the areas that have annexed into the city. The county would require a 3-lane, which is what the project description says, a 3-lane collector, but preserving right-of-way for 5 lanes, and they don't have a specific time frame that they've given us for that. It certainly would happen as, funds, demand, and those types of things are in place.
Oh, and there's just not enough people over there to support a 5-lane road at this point.
I would like to weigh in on and get your opinion on this, Julia. What is the county's vision? Because we see this little stretch that goes through the southern portion of the city, but ultimately, why would they need 3 or 5 lanes down there unless it's going from somewhere to somewhere? What's their vision? What's it going to connect?
Well, I think at this point, they are preserving the opportunity for it to be an arterial if they don't have the opportunity for something further south of the city. But I don't know that they have a specific vision for Brookman. I think they're just trying to protect that if they are not able to get something further south in the future.
So ideally, 99 to I-5, somewhere north Wilsonville. I think that's the rumor
West
I
Side
heard.
bypass.
Yeah, but optionally further south, but
So
it
just
depends.
a little context, when we were doing the Brookman concept plan, and one of the reasons why this was a little confusing to begin with, when we were doing the Brookman concept plan, Brookman Road was a collector, and it was identified in the Brookman concept plan as a collector. And I think you were actually on planning commission at the time, so you probably recall this really well. At the time, it was envisioned that there would be actually, I believe, at least an arterial, if not a limited access facility like not quite a highway, but maybe a highway, about 1,000 feet south of Brookman. And then we were going to realign Brookman, which is why we have that realignment envisioned to get it kind of further away from where that might intersect and make sure that we're still the right distance away from Sunset Boulevard. Since that time, again, I think the county, to protect or preserve an opportunity if others don't arise in the future, they designated Brookman as an arterial, and they wanted to make sure that we preserve 5 lanes of right-of-way, not to construct, but preserve the right-of-way for that. And that's what, when Erica mentioned we're going after some grant funds, we really need to look at that realigned intersection of Brookman and 99 and,
Right.
and the planning within the Brookman concept plan to make sure that that's still the right thing and kind of what all, this city, county, and ODOT, because they all have a little stake in the game where it intersects with 99, make sure that we all align, as well as getting public input and property owner input on kind of what makes sense over there.
Thank you.
Help.
So I guess I just want to clarify again for the public, because I remember when this came in front of the Planning Commission a while back, there were some questions about what this meant. And so we're not changing anything with the planning. We're simply aligning with what Washington County has in their plans, and this is simply a text amendment to our TSP, our Transportation System Plan. So nothing is actually changing. It's just simply some edits, some corrections.
Correct.
Okay.
Inconsistencies.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. Let's open the hearing. We have Garrett Stevenson.
Good evening. My name is Garrett Stevenson. Here on behalf of Holt Homes. Originally, Mike Robinson was going to come here to testify. He's the attorney of record for Holt, but he couldn't make it. So unfortunately, you guys get sloppy seconds tonight. But I just wanted to come by and let you know that Holt supports the Planning Commission's decision on this matter. It supports these housekeeping amendments. As you just heard, these are purely housekeeping amendments that really coordinate the street designations for Brookman between the city and the county. And as I believe Julia mentioned, if this weren't done, the designation, at least on the county's end for this facility, would still be an arterial road. I just want to make a note that this amendment is required by a settlement agreement that the city and the county entered into in order to resolve an appeal over an annexation that the city already approved for property along Brookman. So I think it's all the more appropriate that the council approve these TSP amendments. And for that reason, Holt Homes obviously hopes that you will do so. I would offer to answer any questions that you might have, but I'm not terribly familiar with the case. But if you do have any questions, I'm happy to write them down, and Mike and I can get you a response before the record closes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sylvia, any others?
No others, Mayor.
Okay. With that item, we will now close the hearing. Any discussion, council? Can we have a motion?
I move
Okay,
we.
So this is the first reading.
Oh.
So you really don't have to vote tonight unless you see the urgency to vote tonight. Normally you handle these in first and second readings. I just want to remind you, Josh, am I missing anything?
Nope, that's
we
what I
were
was
both
gonna
going
say.
for
So
our
I turned my mic
buttons.
on,
So
too. That is unlike the item before and the item after, both of which we'll be asking you to do in a single hearing if possible. This one, you can follow the usual process and do a second hearing, which doesn't require any vote tonight. But if you want to do it tonight, you can do that too.
Is there a reason to wait?
Yeah, is there any?
I
can we have discussion at
guess
this
the
point?
caution that I would make is that you have a charter amendment that when you are considering ordinances, your normal process is to do that over 2 nights. And when you have routine things in front of you, sometimes it seems like, let's just move this forward. but that goes against why I think the charter wanted you to have first and second readings. It gives the public another opportunity in 2 weeks to comment on this. It's just a note of caution. I don't think you want to get into doing things in one night.
I would agree
I
with
agree
that.
with
and
Joe.
and if at times when we want to do it in one night, it should be advertised in the agenda as well. So I think we should wait.
Are you withdrawing your motion?
I never made the full motion.
She never got it in there.
No, but I agree. I think we should always do 2 readings when
Right.
when it's not a true emergency.
Okay.
That's true.
Works for me.
Good.
We have completed our first reading,
Yeah.
and we would like it at the next
Continue
city
to March
council.
20th.
Continue,
Okay.
please. Okay, our next item, item C, is ordinance 2018-004, approving a planned unit development, PUD, to be known as the Denali Lane Planned Unit Development and Subdivision. Celia?
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to receive testimony on ordinance 2018-004, approving a planned unit development, PUD, to be known as the Denali Lane Planned Unit Development and Subdivision. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows: to hear staff present the staff report, questions, if any, by the council for staff, receive written testimony. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and the time will be limited as follows. The applicant will receive 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application, 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application, 4 minutes each. Rebuttal from the applicant, the remainder of the 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing, and no other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. Final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the council, discussion by the council. This is the first hearing before the City Council on this application. Generally, council will hold 2 hearings prior to making a decision. A second hearing on this application is currently scheduled for March the 20th. However, in accordance with the Sherwood City Charter, council reserves the right to make a decision at the closing of this hearing by unanimous vote of all sitting council members. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and please speak clearly into the microphone. In reaching a decision on this application, the council may be required to consider whether the application meets relevant approval criteria and any other applicable law. If applicable, those criteria are identified in the staff report, and testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision.
Staff report, please.
This is a legislative decision, so ex parte contacts are not applicable. If you do have any conflicts of interest or bias, though, as always, as with any agenda item, you should disclose those.
Okay. Please.
Great. Good evening, councilors and Mayor. Joy Chang, Associate Planner with the Planning Department. Before you tonight is Denali Lane Plan Unit Development 1701 and Subdivision 1701. The Planning Commission held 2 hearings on this proposal and has forwarded a recommendation to City Council of approval with conditions. The site is located in southeast Sherwood, as shown on this slide. The site is approximately 3.71 acres in size and rectangular in shape, with the exception of a narrow strip that extends to southwest Murdoch. The site is located east of Southwest Murdoch Road and north of Southwest Denali Lane. There also is a narrow strip of land on the southeast corner of the site, approximately 210 feet long and 40 feet wide, that is proposed to include a public utility easement. The applicant proposes to subdivide the 3.71 acre parcel into 7 lots with various open space tracts. The site is zoned for very low density residential plan unit development. The lots range in size from 10,000 square feet to 19,442 square feet. The applicant proposes a planned unit development in this zone in order to utilize the special density allowance of 10,000 square foot minimum lot sizes. The proposed areas of open space is in order to comply with planned unit development requirements. The proposal also includes the construction of local street through the center of the site to connect Southwest Ironwood Lane to the north and Southwest Denali Lane to the south. The street connection is consistent with the transportation system plan, figure 18 of the local street connectivity map. As previously stated, the site is zoned as very low density residential planned unit development. In 2012, the site was previously approved for a 6-lot planned unit development subdivision through Ordinance 2012-004. The approval changed the zoning to include the PUD designation. However, the applicant was unable to develop the site prior to the expiration of the preliminary approval. The site is part of Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, which was approved in concept by the Planning Commission through a resolution in 2006. Although not formally adopted and incorporated into the comprehensive plan, it does provide guidance for development in the Southeast Sherwood area. A piece of Southeast Sherwood Master Plan was incorporated into the Sherwood Zoning Community Development Code through Ordinance 2013-003, specifically Section 16.12.010.A.3, that added Southeast Sherwood Master Planned Unit Development to the code. This parcel was part of the Ken Foster Farm site that has been identified by DEQ having contaminated soil. The property owner is responsible for completing the cleanup for all known contamination on the site. The applicant is actively working with DEQ at this time, at the time of the application submittal, to finalize the cleanup of the contamination. All approvals from DEQ shall be received prior to the applicant proceeding with any development on the subject property. A revised remedial action work plan dated December 15, 2017 has been reviewed and approved by DEQ. A grading permit for the contamination cleanup was submitted to the city and has been reviewed, approved, and issued. The approval criteria are identified on this slide. All review criteria have either been met or can be met as conditioned in the staff report. The applicant has requested for a planned unit development. PUDs allow creativity and flexibility in site design review, which can't be achieved through strict adherence to existing zoning and subdivision standards. This could be due to site constraints such as topography, resource area, parcel configuration, etc. Essentially, a PUD permits development to meet overall density and land use objectives without being bound by rigid requirements such as setbacks, layouts of lots, and streets. This allows developers flexibility in design and the use of open spaces and public areas. This image on this slide is the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan recommended alternative BC plan. The proposal is consistent with the recommended plan through the connection of Southwest Denali Lane to the north and ultimately connecting Southwest Murdoch Road via Southwest Ironwood Lane. Maximum density of 4 dwelling units per net buildable acre is allowed within the very low density residential plan unit development provision. The net buildable area for the site is 2.60 acres. That's after subtracting right-of-way and environmentally constrained areas. And based on the net buildable area, the site can be developed with 10 lots, and the applicant is proposing 7, meeting the standard. Development patterns of alternative BC plans will be further discussed in the following slides. The proposed lots are sized between 10,000 square feet to 19,442 square feet. All lots either meet or exceed the 10,000 square foot minimum. The proposed development will link with the adjacent residential sites through the installation of sidewalk along both sides and the extended southwest Denali Lane. Additionally, a pedestrian path will be installed within the western strip adjacent to Ironwood Lane. With the construction of these features, pedestrian connectivity will be provided from Southwest Murdoch Road along Southwest Ironwood Lane and through to Southwest Denali Lane. In addition, there will be a pedestrian path along the west half of the south edge of Track D and a 5-foot wide access easement along the rear of lots 5, 6, and 7 to provide access between tracks D and E. A pathway and usable open space area will be provided within the western strip of the subject site, Tract A, adjacent to Southwest Ironwood Lane. Tract A will contain a paved pathway, landscaping, and a park benches for the benefit of the local community. The eastern edge of the proposed development will be dedicated as Tract C open space to meet the requirements of the alternative BC Park area. Additional usable open space will be provided in Tract D, containing landscaping, picnic tables, benches, and a paved pathway. A 5-foot wide public access easement has been provided along the rear of lots 5, 6, and 7 to provide pedestrian access between tracks D and E. Environmental constraints. This site is adjacent to identified wetlands. These wetlands and associated vegetative corridor have been further defined and delineated by an environmental consultant, and the report was included as part of the applicant's submittal. The vegetative corridor and wetlands along the eastern boundary of the development will remain undisturbed in Tract C to be dedicated as open space. The very small portion of, I'll identify it, of the very small portion of the vegetative corridor in the 25-foot wide western strip of the site that will be disturbed to construct a pedestrian pathway will be mitigated in the area in Tract C down here. Section 16.12.010A3B5 states development must address the following factors. One factor is the view corridors identified in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. The Southeast Sherwood Master Plan states the height and specific location of buildings along the Denali Lane extension will be important. The further east and the lower in height these homes are constructed, the less they will block eastward views from the adjacent home to the west. This slide shows an image that the applicant provided. It reflects a view corridor identified by the applicant and is underlaid with the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. It shows the view corridor of the existing home to the west and how the proposed subdivision could impact its view. No additional standards or criteria are identified in the Sherwood Zoning Community Development Code and the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. To preserve the view corridor, staff and the Planning Commission recommended the following two conditions. Condition A13, no structure shall encroach within the view corridor or have roof height no taller than the top grade of the western property line to preserve the view corridor shown on the alternative BC of the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. In condition B14, the applicant shall revise the view corridor section and cut fill sheet to show the view corridor in more detail, including any impediments. PUD allows for flexibility of standards. The applicant is requesting the front and street yard setbacks for lots 4 through 7 from 20 feet to 15 feet. So that's a 5-foot difference for all of those lots. Due to the constraints of the site and the large lot sizes of the lots and abutting parcels, approval of the setback modification are necessary. The original request included a reduction of a rear yard setback for Lot 1 from 20 feet to 5 feet. However, it was determined that based on the definition in section 16.10 of the rear yard, the requested 5-foot setback is now a side yard setback, meeting the 5-foot setback standard of the zone. The definition for rear yard lot line is a lot line which is opposite and most distant from the front lot line, provided that irregular and triangular lots, the rear lot line shall be deemed a line 10 feet in length within the lot, parallel to and at a maximum distance from the front lot line. So lot 1 is irregularly shaped lot. The rear yard is identified in red in this image. Due to topography of the site, a shared driveway is proposed for lots 1, 2, and 3 via access easement on lot 2. It's reflected in red a little bit, if you can see that. The preliminary plat shows the driveway to be 20 feet wide with a fire department turnaround easement that's 30 feet wide, benefiting all 3 lots. Key concerns identified by the Planning Commission and condition was related to view corridors, which was addressed previously, landscape buffer, and then compatibility with the surrounding community. Landscape buffer, the code provision on this slide shows varied lot sizes of 10,000 square feet or more if it can show that the adequate buffering exists adjacent to developed properties with screening, landscaping, roadways, or open spaces. The Planning Commission recommended a condition of approval that required the applicants to demonstrate that a 15-foot wide landscape buffer be provided between the site and adjacent properties outside the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan area. Affected properties would be those adjacent to lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Planning Commission recommended some changes to the Denali Lane pattern book. They removed the composite paneling as a choice for siding material, added 2 additional building design standards addressing compatibility with both surrounding and existing development. One key item was lots 3 and 4 shall not have a building elevation of contemporary or modern styles, and a minimum of 3 building elevation styles shall be utilized. The latest pattern book submitted by the applicant dated March 2018 did not reflect these 2 building design standards. It did, however, delete the composite paneling and added 3 additional roofing materials. Four additional testimonies were received since writing the staff report and prior to tonight's City Council hearing. City Recorder sent these documents to you through email, and Sylvia has hard copies for you if you need them. So we received 2 comments from the community. Roger and Lisa Walker questioning view corridor location identified by the applicant and clarification on recommended conditions of approval related to the view corridors. And Mike and Jean Houghton request preservation of existing views through CCNR and setback conditions. The applicant also provided 2 letters with a revised architectural pattern book. One letter was the applicant addressing buffering, view corridor, and the architectural pattern book. A request to also waiving the second council hearing was also stated. And then the second letter was from the applicant's representative, Steve Miller, from Emerald Design, addressing specific recommended conditions of approval related to the view corridor and landscape buffering. So staff recommends that City Council grant approval with conditions for Denali Lane plan unit development and subdivision. Staff is also recommending, due to the timeline of 120 days coming to end on March 9th, that council make a decision, a 1 hearing decision tonight. That concludes my staff report and can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the council?
Okay, so I do have a question. I was reading that Tract C, would that go back into, would that be given to the city? The city has is supposed to maintain that Tract C, is that right?
Track C.
This is the open space, I think it's the utility corridor.
Actually, Track C, Public Works actually requested that the homeowners association maintain Track C.
Okay,
Yeah, versus the city maintaining it.
okay, all right. That clears up actually some additional questions I had about remaining concentrations of hexavalent chromium on the site. So the rest of the properties look like they are under evaluation by the DEQ for removal and then confirmation, soil sampling to be done. Okay.
Yes, that is correct. They actually just received, or they issued the building permit for, as far as the grading permit for the cleanup, just recently.
And it looks like they're going down at most 3 feet, but it looks like it's fairly shallow. They're grading when they're removing.
Yeah, I believe it's identified in, sorry, Erica Palmer, planning manager. I believe it's identified in the DEQ report.
Yep, okay. And then once they do confirmation sampling, the DEQ will issue a no further action needed for each of the lots, not for the whole thing, but for each property owner, for each lot.
We've actually required that no further action be done prior to any final occupancy.
Okay, good. So once the sampling is done to confirm, then they get the, okay.
Right,
Thank
because
you.
it becomes a lot harder once they're all separate
Yes.
tax lot owners.
Okay, thank you. All right.
One quick question on that. Track E, where non-usable soil contamination area, is that part of the cleanup as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then one more question I have about Tract E. Is that going to be an on-site containment area that will be capped for chrome soil? Or will most of the hot spots be taken off and removed? It looks like they're going to be taken off site as from based on what I read, but here on the map it says containment area, so I'm wondering if some soils that might be moderately impacted with chrome might be put here and then capped, or is that, do we know?
So what you've said is correct. Most of the
Okay.
soils will be taken off site. The applicant is here tonight and can
Oh,
speak
okay.
to the capping of the rest of the soils on that Tract C.
Okay, thank you. I mean Tract E.
Go ahead.
I have a couple questions. So can you explain the staff and/or, I know the planning commission is not here, but the recommended 15-foot landscape buffer around 1, 2, 3 and lots 4? And would that affect the 5-foot side yard setback that currently lot 1 has? Would that adjust that over 15 feet?
Yes, speaking to your last statement there, it would adjust lot 1 and potentially move the structure 15 feet to meet that 15-foot setback. Overall, Planning Commission had this discussion, about buffering, and there is, I forget exactly, if we go back to the slide here that states the criteria or talks about buffering. Here we go. So it talks about varied lot sizes are allowed within a minimum lot size area of 10,000 square feet if it can be shown that adequate buffering exists adjacent to developed properties with screening, landscaping, roadways, or open spaces. So the property to the west of lot 1 on that side is developed with a house. And the properties, I want to go back to the site plan here. On lots 3 and 4, are adjacent to an existing subdivision. So Planning Commission, when they discussed this, it's a discretionary view, it's a PUD. They wanted to increase that extra buffer around those lots.
So if Denali is an extension, if Denali Lane is an extension of Denali Lane, and the neighborhood is just continuing, why are we drawing a landscape buffer between the two parts of the neighborhood? Or are they so different? For example, are the distances between the houses 4, 5, and 6, are they not the same kinds of distances that are between the houses directly to the south that already exist? I mean, what's different about, if I drive from one part of the neighborhood to the other, do I go, oh, I've entered a different neighborhood? Or is it one neighborhood and suddenly, what were they thinking? Why are we buffering that space?
So Planning Commission, it was just their extra, discretion they read that code language and talked about that extra buffering between the existing developments to the west and to the south.
Yes, I mean, basically it is a discretionary, how you interpret whether or not it's an adequate buffer is ultimately up to the council. The Planning Commission recommended that you consider an adequate buffer be 15 feet because of concerns that were expressed by adjacent property owners.
Julie, what's the normal buffer?
You mean a normal setback? 5 foot, the requirement is a 5 foot side yard setback.
Yeah, so I understand there are houses directly to the south of the new development, but you said there's an existing home directly to the west. How far away is it from the property line? Is it close to the property line? Is it far away from the property line?
It's far, it's 150 feet, roughly.
And it sits higher, it sits a fairly amount higher than if you're standing on Denali and you're looking off to the north and you walk down the hill a little bit and you look back to your west, that house is about, 15, 20 feet higher, the base. I mean, there's some distance there.
It is higher. I don't have the grade sheet in front of me, but I do believe it is higher.
I think it says in here, it looks like it's about 30 feet
30.
difference.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think it's
thank you.
25 or 30 feet. How about I noticed the Planning Commission was pretty specific about architectural styles. Of the styles submitted by the developer in the revised, do these tend to be closer to the styles that exist now on Denali Lane?
So this has been modified, which identified styles that are similar in regards to the community. But when we start thinking about compatibility, we also start thinking about architectural features or elements towards the house, like brickwork, that might be consistent, and they can bring that forward, or the type of siding, they can bring that forward. So it doesn't have to be identical. So, but at the same time, they're still bringing components so that it is compatible.
And I'm going to chime in there. So basically what the Planning Commission ultimately recommended, there was a lot of discussion about architectural style and modern versus early American. And I think generally what's there adjacent is more of that early American and traditional style. But the Planning Commission really discussed that it's the elements, the brick, the wood, kind of the features on the home that make it compatible, which is why they were generally okay with all of the building elevations except for that composite paneling. They felt that that was too modern.
Right. And also lots, there is a very specific requirement. It basically says lots 3 and 4 shall not have a building elevation of contemporary or modern style, just because
they're right next to the neighborhood.
Yeah, they're abutting directly.
So the low pitch traditional, which is, relatively comparatively shorter than some of the other options, would not be something you'd want to put on 3 or 2 to sort of maintain the view corridor in question?
It was it was brought up during the first during the first public hearing in regards to if it was a flat roof, the view corridor could be preserved, and identifying that as ideal for lots 1 and 2, but it was never moved forward in regards to a condition.
And Joy, I believe you had said about when we were at this part in the presentation that there were some conditions that the Planning Commission set on their approval and they were not met in?
No, I was basically stating that the latest pattern book that was submitted by the applicant didn't identify those 2 conditions. One about the specific elevation of contemporary and modern styles, and also that there needs to be a minimum of 3 building elevation styles shall be utilized for the variety of housing styles within that community.
Okay, thanks.
I have another question. Let's talk about the view corridor. So it's in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. It was never officially adopted or codified by the city. However, it's been recognized by the city, and the view corridor, as outlined on this slide, affects only 1 residence. Is that right? It's only the house to the west.
The way that Southeast Sherwood Master Plan was identified a view corridor, it literally benefited 1 parcel.
So what is that a view of? Is that Mount Hood, or what is that? Anybody know what that?
I believe so.
It's Mount Hood.
Mount Hood. All right. So no building gets built. Does this mean no trees can be planted in those tracts that grow too tall, or what exactly is protected in this view corridor?
Great, excellent question. So the development code and also the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan does not identify any specific regulations or standards for how this view corridor should be preserved. So that's something that the council can definitely talk about, but
the guiding principles that we have in regards to view corridor, it says in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan, the height and specific location of the buildings along Denali Lane extension will be important. The further east and the lower in height these homes are constructed, the less they will block eastward views from the adjacent home to the west.
And you said home to the west. So this entire view corridor is for 1 home directly to the west. It seems like, my understanding, it seems like the developers decided to place the houses. I mean, because of topography, there's a big hill, right there, slope right there to the north of Lot 1. So it almost doesn't make sense to push it any further that direction anyway. But is it your understanding then that is the developer in line with the city recommending the view corridor be part of the recommended conditions, or did I read a letter from that person that said, no, we don't need it if we don't include it? Does that mean I'm trying to think of my options here. The Planning Commission said, yes, let's put it in.
So it does, outside of the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan stating these vague standards, in order for anyone to develop within the very low density PUD, it says it needs to consider Southeast Sherwood Plan view corridor. And
that's what it says.
That's it.
Okay.
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 I just want to remind the council, the applicant is here as well, and so I'm sure that if you have additional questions about that, and then I believe, yes, the adjacent property owner is here as well, and we'll be able to talk about their interpretation of the view corridor.
Okay.
But as Joy and Erica said, there isn't a lot of detail as far as what is specifically intended. But Joy, can you talk about why, we were talking about this earlier today, why we think that the applicant's interpretation was that is the view corridor?
Right. So this particular slide, you can see that he underlaid the Southeast Sherwood master plan.
Right.
And we were looking where he identified where the view corridor is, and we were identifying the location of the proposed homes based on the Southeast Sherwood plan. So if you look up, where's my pointer? Based on this underlay here, it looks as if this, can you see my pointer?
No.
No.
Are we looking? Oh, there it is.
There we go.
There it is.
Let it be light. So the location of this particular lot or home, and also the placement of this home, there's a significant
Seems to
gap.
indicate.
Yeah.
And so there isn't anything in the Southeast Sherwood master plan that said that they delineated, like truly delineated where this view corridor is. And so based on this sketch, we are making, we're trying to figure out where is this. And so that's why it was like, okay, the distance between the typical homes aren't really supposed to be this distant. And so we were, taking that jump, saying, okay, and also the applicant took that jump to say, this is where the view corridor is.
And if I'm not mistaken, in the letters that we have here from Roger and Lisa Walker, they do not agree with that view corridor as sketched here by the applicant.
That is correct.
And I believe they probably submitted a testimony as well. The Walkers, I think, are going to speak.
Okay. That'd be great.
Okay, I'd like to hear more. Thanks.
We had two letters in that, what we just got handed, and one from Mike and Jen Houghton. It looks like they're on Denali Lane. And they had a concern about the landscape buffer between the PUD and the existing neighborhood, concerned that the heights of the trees will block their views. Am I understanding that properly?
Right,
Nearly
so-
all the trees the applicants are proposing will grow the height covering their views.
So let me see if I can find another map that clearly identifies. I don't think I have one. So their property is here, right here. And so they're not part of the Southeast Master Plan. So as far as preservation of a view, we have no regulations tied to it.
But they're concerned about the condition that Planning Commission put on for that buffer? Is that what?
Well, they're here tonight too, so they
Okay.
can speak to that.
Okay.
Enough questions? Thank you. And now we will open the public hearing.
Mayor, the council will receive testimony from the applicant in a period of 30 minutes. Here is the sheet for the applicant.
Steve Miller.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Steve Miller. I'm with eMario Design at 6445 Southwest Fallbrook Place, Suite 100, Beaverton 97008. I'm with the developer, Tim Roth. Tim, I'll let you give your information.
Tim Roth, JT Roth Construction, 12600 Southwest 72nd Avenue, Portland 97223. The owner, the applicant, developer, and hopefully the builder of the homes.
First, I'd like to thank staff for that detailed staff report and answering your questions. I think it really helps us move along here tonight. So I won't go over a lot of the information that they already provided. I think really what we want to focus on tonight are the recommended conditions of approval from the Planning Commission and some of the other issues that you guys already talked about as it relates to those recommended conditions of approval. So as staff indicated, the property is located in Southeast Sherwood within the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan boundary off of Denali Lane. It's 3.7 acres in size. We're proposing a 7-lot subdivision as a PUD, which as staff has indicated is 3 lots below the maximum density. Excuse me. And we also have provided some other amenities to go along with that, such as a street connection, sidewalks, open space, really all the things you would expect from a subdivision. So with that, This slide is a very good slide because it shows you the layout of the subdivision as we're proposing it. And as you see in terms of the view corridor, that's what we would like to address first. We have tried to place the homes pursuant to the BC master plan. And then staff kind of clarified for you that there's very little guidance in the code on where that corridor is. It doesn't come right out and identify it. It talks about there being two hill sites within the master plan boundary, one in the middle of the property that's about 16 feet in elevation, and one in the south corner of the master plan boundary at about 360 feet, which would be the property behind our property to the west. And that's about it. It talks about Mount Hood. It doesn't talk about its location. It doesn't talk about any references to it in relationship to the two properties that it calls out as being the high points of the master plan boundary. And in addition, through the master planning process, the homeowners in the southwest corner of that boundary requested to be removed from the master planning processes. They did not believe they would move forward with developing their properties further. So in the master plan, it notes that those folks requested exception from the master planning process. So when you look at the master plan, you'll see a boundary that includes a large square, and then as you go through that, you'll see it gets amended to remove 5 parcels at the southwest corner from being part of the master plan, which is fairly significant. These folks went into that process and said, remove us. We don't want to be part of this because we're not going to redevelop our properties. We're good with what we have right now. So that's a fairly significant comment. As staff pointed out, this is the criteria that we're provided with to be able to prepare an application to come forward to you folks. And as you see down in number 5 towards the bottom, it just says the view corridors identified in the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. And so we take that, we flip over to the Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. These are the maps, a couple of the maps that are provided within the Sherwood Master Plan. And this one shows alternative BC on the left and the aerial perspective of the BC Master Plan overlaid in that landscape looking to the west. As you look at, see if I can get that cursor to show up. Not quite sure how she did that. Oh, got it, okay.
And then click laser pointer.
That one.
Yep.
Got it, okay. So as you look out here, this is the high point in the center of the master plan boundary that called out one of the view areas. And as you look straight to the east, you see Mount Hood in the distance. Our property is down here. This is the subject property to the west. As you look from their property, it's not due east. It's slightly to the northeast is where Mount Hood is being shown. So when you look at the master plan and all the information that's in there, as well as the separation between these homes, looking at the tight spacing of the other homes, as an applicant, we are only left with the ability to conclude that this must be the corridor in question that they're asking for preservation on. So as such, we designed our project that way. If you go back to the first slide, you'll see we pulled our houses down to the south, opened up the north, and provided the view corridor per the master plan. So to respond to some of the comments that were provided after the Planning Commission meeting, they indicated that we provided erroneous maps. We provided the maps that you provided to us to identify the corridor, and we based our assumptions based on the best available information that the city provided us. And I think any logical person looking at all the totality of the information in the code and in the master plan would come to a conclusion that this must be the corridor in question. So unless there's another corridor that we're not aware of, we are comfortable with saying this is the corridor that was intended for protection. And we've tried to do that. We've tried to locate the homes in a manner to do that. And one thing that we have a problem with in terms of the condition of approval recommended by the Planning Commission is we can't build on lot 1 because they're saying that the height of the home can only be as high as the western edge of the elevation of the existing landscape there. So we would only be able to build a 1-foot tall home. And if we pull it down towards the front, we're looking at about a 10-foot home, what we would have to carve into a hill and put up expensive retaining walls and have no property. So most developers go to, they don't fight the landscape, they don't fight the topography, they go with what it gives them. And so we moved the homes to the most logical home sites that were available there. And so what we're asking for is to be able to build on Lot 1, as proposed here, to a height that is no taller than the finished grade of the home to the west. So that means that our rooftop would be as high as their foundation. So they would always look over the top of that home. And we believe that that provides sufficient protection of that view corridor for the home to the west. If we can't build into their view, then theoretically they'll always have that view. And without any other information to rely upon, we can only assume that the master plans are showing that view corridor as identified in alternative BC, which we're showing right here as being over the kind of the northeast or the northern portion of our property.
Can I add to that? Per this design, per this map, the condition reads, no structure shall encroach within the view corridor or have a roof height no taller than the top grade of the western property line to preserve the view corridor shown in alternative B and C. So the intent was any portion of the structure that would encroach into that defined view corridor could not exceed the max or the highest grade of that lot. Our best calculation right now is that the finished floor of the house elevation is literally 1 foot below the highest grade elevation on that lot. So any portion of that structure that would encroach into that view corridor could not exceed that 1 foot height. So we would have to build outside of the view corridor. The point that was the fact that was pointed out earlier was that, in fact, the elevation of our building pad on that house on lot number 1 literally is about 20 feet lower than the building grade of the Walker's residence. The Walker residence is what's driving this view corridor. If there was no structure on that property, there would probably not be an argument for defining or preserving a view corridor. So we looked at the Walker property and tried to understand what we were dealing with height. It wasn't realistic for the Planning Commission to set a height restriction of anything encroaching into that corridor of 1 foot when there's a elevation difference between our building grade, our finished floor building grade, and the Walker's building grade of about 20 feet. So what we're saying is that, what we're proposing is that we don't disagree that the Walkers shouldn't have a right to preserve their view. We're defining the view corridor as where it should be preserved, but we should have the opportunity to build higher than 1 foot if it encroaches into that corridor, as long as it doesn't exceed the height of their finished floor or their building grade, which we believe is a realistic approach to that. They're still preserving, they're still looking over the rooftop. And again, their property is 150 feet inset from our property at an elevated grade.
And how high would that make the house you would build on lot 1? The total height?
Well, from the approach, from the finished floor of the main floor, it would not exceed 20 feet in height.
And then coming up Denali Lane, it'd probably be a lot deeper or a lot
Well,
longer just because of the...
Coming up Denali Lane, we have a private drive that's servicing access for the lots 2 and 3. So as you're coming up that private drive, the grade increases by a couple of feet. But we're not identifying an encroachment into a view corridor on lots 2 or 3 because we're not identifying a view corridor there. And so we don't see lots 2 and 3 impacting. We do have a height requirement that we have to comply with the building codes. And so we can't exceed that height, and there's a formula that we have to follow. So we believe that these upper 3 lots, ultimately, because of the downhill slope on the grade, we believe that the ridge height on those 3 houses are going to be somewhere between 20 and 25 feet. So it's not like we're building 10 feet of, and blocking the walker's view. The other point that I would like to stress or would like to add, if I may, is that if this view corridor is an issue for the walkers, we understand that. If it creates a restriction on our property, I feel very strongly that that same restriction should be applied to the walkers' property to preserve that view from that existing house for the future, for their future, or for future property owners that might live in that house. I know that you guys don't have the power to impose an easement on their property, but I would think that if they have a strong argument to create that and preserve that view, that they should voluntarily be required or requested to preserve that in the form of a view corridor easement on their property.
And the reason for that, to help provide some context, is when we were, when the Planning Commission was looking at buffering, and I'll get to a slide here in a minute, they were looking at the redevelopment potential of the Walker's property. And so they were trying to come to a conclusion on if we move the homes back, provide additional setback, how could that be a benefit to the redevelopment of the Walker's property? In theory, the Walkers have very limited redevelopment potential without developing in context with all the other properties around them to get street frontages, lot sizes, building paths that work. Because once you move off of their home site, as you folks probably know from doing a site visit over there, it's quite steep, especially on the north side. It falls off quite a bit from where their home is down to where Denali Lane is. It's about almost 50 feet of elevation drop.
Excuse
to the
me.
road to the home.
Can you tell me where's Walker? You mentioned the Walker family. What home?
Oh, they're the home to the west.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
I'm sorry. I thought we were all on the same page.
No,
there.
we are on the same page. I just thought that was another homeowner name.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
All right.
So, anyhow, I think we've kind of shared with you our thoughts on the view corridor, how we came to these conclusions, the information we relied upon to be able to design the subdivision, to be respectful of the neighbors and to respectful of your Southeast Sherwood Master Plan. Even though it was not adopted and codified into the code, it is a document that you require applicants to go to gather information from that document to be able to prepare a subdivision within that Sherwood Master Plan area that's generally consistent with that plan. And I think when you look at the overlay of our proposed PUD with the Sherwood Master Plan, we're generally consistent there. We did turn the road because there's a hill there, so it made sense to meander the road, which I think for the folks to the south will like, because that creates a natural calming device. So you won't get that typical cut-through traffic moving at high speeds. You'll get much lower traffic. So we did meander it to the landscape. We've moved the home sites down to the south per the master plan. We're agreeable to not building a height that would block their view. So we're just kind of looking for some reasonable conclusions here based on the facts. And so the fact of the matter is they're approximately 20 feet higher in elevation from our building pads that we're going to have on these lots. And we just would like the opportunity to build up to that point so they can still look over the homes and still have that wonderful view that they have today. I grew up with a view of Mount Hood, and I can appreciate that. Yeah. So moving on to buffering.
These are the two main topics that were dominated the conversation and the deliberation by the Planning Commission. So we're trying to address that. We're trying to focus and offer some,
And so to that
facts.
Sorry about that, Tim. To that point, again, the code language, that's what we have to rely on to prepare these applications. If you go to 1, it talks about the varied lot sizes, and then it talks about buffering being in the form of screening, landscaping, or roadways, or open space. It does not talk about increasing required setbacks to create a buffer. So this is the shadow plat that we're required to provide for adjacent properties to show that we're not limiting their redevelopment potential. What you see here is a redevelopment plan that takes advantage of all the existing tax lots in that area. So you'd have to have complete ownership of all, I believe there's 5 tax lots there, which includes the Walker's property, to get this design. This design, I'll be honest with you, has some fatal flaws. For example, the roundabout, not only does it go over the walker's home, but it goes down the side of the hill. So that would have to be pulled back. If you were to get a layout like this and you had lots that were behind the walker's home right now, between our lots and their lots, that's where the Planning Commission started looking at this and saying, well, what if? What if a scenario played out like this? Maybe we should move the home on lot 1. And again, the conversation was specific to lot 1, moving that home. Because as you look at our plans, you'll see that the other homes are pretty much at that 15 feet. But because of the way that lot is shaped, that property boundary becomes a side yard, which we comply with. We comply with the 5-yard setback, and we're willing to landscape that, and we're willing to put up a good neighbor fence there to provide some buffering on the home. But the reality is that we meet your setback, and we couldn't understand, because we couldn't speak to the Planning Commission about this because they had already closed the hearing, so they were looking at a document that they didn't have a lot of information on. And so I want you guys to understand that this is not there today. It's very unlikely that you would get this style of development. And if they were to get those lots between their home and ours, the property line to the east would be the rear yard setback. And in the VLDR zone, that is a 20-foot setback. So you would have 25 feet from a home on our lot, and if they were to develop something like this, they would have 20 feet for that home. So you'd have 25 feet between the homes, which we believe is pretty significant already. We don't think there's an additional need for 10 more feet to create whatever the buffer concept was that they were working around. We just aren't clear on what that was. And so instead of just tagging it on lot 1, they decided to, hey, let's just put it around the whole boundary. That's when the other neighbor to the south of lot 4 came forward and said, wow, that concerns me, because if you have that big of a setback, then you're going to build a narrower, longer home that could impact my view. I'd rather you have a normal setback, because I want to protect my view. So again, we're not here to be bad neighbors. It behooves us to do that. We're here to bring a plan that is easily approvable for the city council, that meets all the city codes and requirements. We're going to build to the heights that you guys allow us to build to. We're going to provide a wonderful subdivision that I think will be an asset to the community. And I think we're going to have a variety of home sites that people will be proud of to see. And we appreciate the Planning Commission preserving the flat rooftop so we can use that design on lots 1 and 2 to better preserve those view corridors.
Let's call that a low pitch as opposed to a flat roof. I'm not real in favor of doing a lot of flat roofs, and especially in residential.
Sure.
And Steve makes some very good points. The addition of the 10 feet and calling it a buffer, effectively what they're doing is they're adjusting the setbacks. And we have met the setbacks. We've met the codes of setbacks. So they're really not effectively addressing the buffering. The buffering, again, is addressed as screening, landscaping, roadways, or open spaces. Part of our private drive, the T portion of the hammerhead up there, is a roadway that creates and provides a buffer. A screen or a landscaping or a fence along the east property line of lot 1 or even lot 2 would satisfy the buffering. The side yard of lot 3 and the side lot of our lot 4 a fence would create and satisfy the buffering as it's defined in the code. So we object to, and we're requesting that that condition just be stricken from as a condition, and we need to comply with what the code requires for buffering and what the code allows for their setbacks.
And as I noted, in the original staff report, staff has conditions of approval speaking to a landscape plan and providing that type of detail before we plat the project. And so we believe that staff addressed that concern of buffering by requiring the landscaping plan. And we're more than, I'll let you know what that is. So in the letter that I provided you, if you go towards the back, and I know it was a long letter, but as you get to the back on page on page 3, the last paragraph, I note that staff had conditions of approval B7 and G2. And those conditions of approval required that the applicant submit a final landscape plan verified by a landscape professional prior to final plan approval. And condition of approval G2 required the applicant to install the landscaping according to the plan or pay a bond for that landscaping. And so they're thinking about this. They're saying, hey, we know that we need to get a little something in here. We want you to provide a landscape plan. We want it to be certified. And we also want you to make sure you install it with the development of the project. And we're saying that's fine. And we're also saying we'll put in a good neighbor fence too on those lots to create some additional screening for those existing homes. So we really believe that that condition of approval to have a 15-foot setback increase is just unnecessary in this situation. And we think there's adequate setbacks right now in place to do that by adhering to the city setbacks that you have in your code. So we would respectfully request that that condition be removed. And then as we noted, we would like to request that condition of approval recommended by the Planning Commission, A13, be changed. It just is not well crafted and it misses the intent of what I believe they're trying to address that evening, which is to not have a home encroach into that where that potential view is. And so we're agreeing to not build above that finished floor elevation to a height of 20 feet. And we can certify those type of situations too, if that's something we need to do. We'll leave the remainder for any rebuttal. Any questions?
Yeah, a quick question, and this might be for Josh too. I know staff had asked that we do the first and second reading tonight, and there's you're asking us to waive one of the conditions that the Planning Commission put on this, and the Planning Commission works very hard. I respect the work they do, so I take your request seriously, but also, I'd like a little bit more time to review this. So my question for Josh is, if with a 120-day rule, what happens if we don't approve this tonight?
The 120 days runs on Friday. So if you don't approve it tonight, if you don't have a special meeting between now and Friday, then you would violate the 120-day rule.
Is there a process for extending that?
The applicant can agree to extend the 120 days. That's the process for extending that.
Is that something you guys would be willing to do so we have some more time to consider
I
this?
think at this point we'd be kind of willing to see where we go tonight. I know there's other folks that would like to speak, and we would like to rebut that and provide you with the information you need. I completely understand your comment. I was a planning commissioner at the City of Bend, and so I understand how recommendations operate. But I think in this one particular situation, I think you can see that the way that 13A in particular is crafted has some flaws in it that need to be addressed. And so we're trying to provide you with our thoughts on that and how it could be addressed in terms of the increased setback. I guess, unless we hear a quality reason for keeping that increased setback, and that we can provide some additional information that might help you look at it differently, then we could consider, extending the time period, or if there's other circumstances that would warrant the extension. We are not opposed to that, but we're waiting to find out the necessity for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sylvia, who's next?
Mayor and Council, you have the sheet that was provided at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know if that was in favor or opposed, but at this time, the council should take all testimony from those in favor.
Yes.
So does that indicate if it's in favor?
It actually says neutral.
Neutral.
So I'm not sure how you proceed with that.
Okay, so at this time, the ones that I have are opposed. So if you want to take the neutral.
Okay. Jen Houghton?
Good evening, City Council. I'm sorry for my blunder earlier this evening. You can tell it's my first time ever speaking for City Council, so I appreciate your graciousness. My name is Jen Houghton. I live at 23524 Southwest Denali Lane, and that puts my home right adjacent to Lot 4. So Lot 4 would be my neighbors. So I came to the Planning Commission last month, and I really appreciated everything the Planning Commission was doing to try to take into consideration the existing homes' views and that their neighborhood have some continuity. However, I had a lot of concern with the Commission's recommendation B15, which was specifically the landscape buffer. When we purchased our home 2 years ago, one of the main selling features of the home was the view from my kitchen window, which includes both Mount St. Helens as well as Mount Adams. And I have 4 kids, so I spend a lot of time at my kitchen window looking at those mountains, making me feel happier about the amount of dishes that I have to do, you know. So the view is a really big deal to me. My concern with that landscape buffer is that it's going to, that 15-foot buffer is going to create a need for the developer to put a long skinny house next to my house, therefore blocking the view from my kitchen window. So my kitchen window is in the northeast corner of my home, which would be right there to the back of my house, but right next to Lot 4. So I'm not sure if you have the letter that I included there. Yeah, you do. Yay. So if you look at Exhibit B, you can see that the way my home was set up, it was specifically set back closer to the street so that the house next to me could also still have their views, which include Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams. So we are asking that that same consideration be provided to us with this new development. We would love for the council to consider keeping the current 5-foot side yard setbacks so that the developer can put a nice size house that's appropriate with the neighborhood and not need to project back so far into the property. Granting their proposal for just the 15-foot front yard setback would probably also help them. And because PUDs have some flexibility with their rules, we would love it if they had a maximum from the front of their property, from the front property line to the back of their structure of 58 feet, because that would make it so that my view from my kitchen window wouldn't be obstructed. We also would ask that the PUD has language in their CCNRs that limit their tree height to 15 feet. Currently, all the trees that the applicant has proposed to be planted, all of them but one grow to significantly over 15 feet. And at that 15 feet, that's going to start blocking the view from my windows. And we would also ask that you not waive the second hearing just so the council has time to take a look at these items, and that's all I got. I really appreciate your consideration, and if you have any questions.
Questions?
I have one quick question. So I've been out to the property twice now, and I always stop at the end of Denali. I'm looking at your house.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to figure out where this view is here, the one on Exhibit
So
B.
that one, I went over to the Ironwood Estates, and so
Look
that's
up.
looking from Ironwood back at my property, you know. So that's,
Okay.
I'm northeast
okay.
at the Ironwood, looking back
Yes,
at my
the
property.
collection of the homes that are up on, the small collection of homes that are on that hill, you're just looking back.
That is
Okay,
correct.
Okay, thanks.
That is correct.
That's Fred. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The first one of opposed is Lisa Walker. I take it you're Roger.
Lisa and Roger Walker, 23500 Southwest Murdoch Road, Sherwood 97140. Thank you for your time tonight. Like the applicant, we were very frustrated at the last meeting because we, in the audience, could not speak. It had been closed and we were only able to look at the testimony that was written for that time, and then also could hear them discussing things that really weren't actually accurate, which had to, in my case, if you are reading my letter, it has to do with that view corridor. I would invite each of you to come and stand in my backyard, and it is 100% Lot 2 that we're talking about. Lot 1 really is down the hill, and I'm okay with a 5-foot setback on that property because it's down the hill. And even if I decide as a 3-acre parcel, I can put 3 houses there. Even if I decide to put a house there, that would be just fine. I don't need that 15-foot buffer that they were asking for, and they were doing all this ahead, and I knew that was not something that we needed, but I appreciated what their thought was. But the biggest concern, if I can ask you to look at what we submitted, was the fact that the view corridor, the view of Mount Hood, of which I believe in your packet there were some photographs. It wasn't in I looked at the packet that was on the website, and it showed you pictures of Mount Hood from previous submissions I had made, because we've been working on this since about forever, about 12 years. And we spent, as I know that I think Councilor Griffin was on the Planning Commission as well when we were looking at the South East Sherwood Master Plan, and we spent a lot of time with that. And the fact that this went to the City Council and was approved for 6 lots tells you that we had a lot of information, a lot of neighbors and homeowners from developments concerned about the way this piece of property was going to be developed. And it was determined 6 lots was enough. And I really don't have a problem with 7 lots. They wanted 8 at the time, if I recall. But please don't discount the amount of time people have put into this over the years just because they're not here, because it's pretty darn exhausting coming again and again, as I'm sure you all know, to come and do this again since, like I said, 12 years we've been doing this. If I could draw your attention to the last page of my submission, it shows you what I thought the applicant was showing us was the view corridor, my Exhibit C. And that came from the applicant's packet. It is their page 11 that's referred to. Are you able to locate that?
Could you show us what it looks like?
Exhibit C.
Exhibit C, last page of my letter. And that is not a bad exhibit at all. It shows, though, it is actually line B that would be directly over Lot 2, that is 100% Mount Hood in front of our home. Lot 1 is barely seen by our home. Lot 3 has a lot of trees between our home and that lot. So it is really Lot 2 that I'm concerned about, that we've always been concerned about for the view, not Lot 1. So the fact that we're talking about the level of the house on Lot 1, we're okay with what they've said. It's really Lot 2 that we need to be concerned about, and I don't know how to prove that to you.
This is Roger, and you can just stand in our backyard right in the middle of our home, and you can look directly east with a compass, which I did before coming here this last week, and Mount Hood is directly dead east. And listening to the testimony from the builder or the applicant, I fully understand the frustrations that they had trying to figure out where in the heck was this view easement, looking at the Sherwood BC plan, and fully understand how they could do that. It kind of takes, if you look at their view easement off to the north, it seemed convenient that it be there. But it's totally not accurate, and I think they just kind of drew it towards the verbiage to Mount Hood off the Sherwood view, the BC plan. There's a word up there that says to Mount Hood, and if you were to look at the overlay, the full overlay, you would see that path goes directly to the verbiage Mount Hood. So it is totally not correct. And you just have to take my word for it that it is Mount Hood from our property is due east. There was some comments made by council this evening that it kind of made it sound like that we were being petty on our request for a view easement. I took it kind of hard from the comments that was made. When we purchased that home, I believe 17 years ago, that was supposed to be a PUD that was not buildable because it had the 5-acre rule, I believe. And we paid a premium for our property for that view and for the premise that there would be no homes built down there. We made it 17 years. Yay, we made it 17 years. We're not opposed to this development at all. I would just really would like to see, and I think it is possible now with Lot 2 as far back as it's set, that if they could tell us that the top of their roof line will be no higher than the foundation of our home, we're golden. That is really great. I need to add one more thing, some verbiage somewhere that in the HOA for the new neighborhood, that they can't plant trees in their backyard or between the proposed homes and my home. That would go over 15 feet, or I'm sorry, over their roof lines. It would be counterintuitive to the view easement. So I need them to regulate that and have that rule. It just doesn't make sense for all of us to jump through all these hoops and all of a sudden you have a homeowner that plants a fir in there and then 5 years later, there goes the view. So we need to have some verbiage there, and that's the reason why it was very important to have this view easement defined. So again, we have a financial stake in this tonight. We have a pleasure stake in this tonight. We have a resale stake in this. That, you know, if we allow the builder to put in a home that covers up our mountain, we take a financial hit as well. So, and I'm sure that nobody wants to see that. You all understand. So that's why we're here.
And we already have to pay for the bad dirt.
Oh.
Because we have bad dirt.
Yes, we are in the DEQ thing, and starting in May, we will be digging up our yard. We will be losing some trees due to this, and fully understand the nature of the remediation. So that's all I have.
On that note, I thought that the record of decision with DEQ will allow you to be paid for anything that you remove off your property.
There is some money for it, yes. It is probably several months in the doing, so we're not sure how much when it's all done.
There's something about that though. That's we are capping some of our hot spots on our property. We are not removing any dirt because of the shallowness of the dirt. But there's we'll get a no further action letter. But when we go to sell our property, we will still have to disclose that there is contamination on the property, and we all know that a buyer will not give you your full asking price or the value of the property for that. So.
And I also would, because of the amount of information tonight, it is very, it will take some reading, and I'm concerned that you did not get it till tonight. We did give it in time for it to be included in the packets by what we were told, so it's concerning that no one's having a lot of time to look at that, and I again would invite anyone to come out to our property, because you can't really see it from the end of Denali Lane. You know, you really can't.
Your time is winding down. Thank you for coming.
I'd like to ask another question.
Yes.
So can I ask that now?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Hey, Lisa, what about that house on lot 6? Is that low enough in the grade that's not going to affect the view? That's directly east of lot 2. It's across the road.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, oh, yeah.
It's further down. It's only the house placement and height on lot 2.
Really just lot 2.
And again, I want to hear from you again. You don't care about that 15-foot, that extra 10-foot,
that really is,
or the 5-foot setback that's on house 1. That doesn't affect you at all.
Where they've included that it won't be higher than our grade than on lot 2.
Right.
And lot 1 is not. Does go down, and it is not in our view. It will be possibly in the view if we were to put 3 homes on our
Right.
property, which we could. We wouldn't do 5 because we don't have enough for a PUD, as they pointed out. But
Right.
so that was their concern at the planning commission, was wanting to buffer that home. But
Okay.
there's
No issue.
that's not as big of a deal.
Thank
as
you.
So,
the rest of it.
and I'm not sure who this question would go to you or to the applicants or to the city. So looking at Exhibit C as you've got here, and just as I'm not a lawyer, I'm also not a topographer.
Yeah.
What is the elevation of that proposed home on 2 versus on lot 1? I mean, we did hear that there was a 30-foot or 20 to 30-foot difference on lot 1 and your existing home. Do we know what that is on 2?
I can't tell from where they're building
Is
it.
that a hill? Is that
It's
up?
a hill.
It is,
Yeah,
and it is
high-
set
hill.
back.
This is
I
higher
think the
than-
builder will, or
Okay.
the applicant can answer better, because
Yeah.
they have a nice topology.
I'm concerned, though, that they've worked so hard to get, on lot 1, and I understand why they did it. And like I said, it was so frustrating because we wanted to say, no, please stop talking and listen to us.
So,
Like,
so maybe,
really
maybe
don't
we can have
care.
them address that, I guess, when they
Yeah,
when
and
they
that
come back.
picture we did draw, in our other exhibit showed you, really,
Exhibit B.
Exhibit B is really,
Yeah.
Exactly.
I can answer the question. Lisa, where did this come from?
which one?
The Exhibit C?
It is page 11 of the applicant's application.
And these lines, did you draw those on there? Or were those lines already there?
Lines were already there.
Thank you.
That was referred to also, the page 11, and it was something we couldn't see. We were saying, where is page 11? And then we found it by counting to city. Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, I don't think anybody, that the applicant was in any way trying to do anything other than make a great
Trying to figure it
neighborhood. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and council, the applicant has 6 minutes and 44 seconds remaining if they'd like to provide rebuttal.
Please.
Thank you. I think as you can see from the comments that you received, we're pretty close. We're on the same page as our neighbors for the most part here. It's just tweaking it, it sounds like, to get it right. And to provide clarification on that sheet that you're looking at, that was sheet 11 of our plan set. Staff was going through some changes at the time we started this application process, and you had a contract planner in at the time. And so we based some information on what we were told from them, and then staff changed a little bit. We've met with them, and we've kind of been directed a couple different directions. And so I apologize for any confusion in the information. I think what you're seeing, though, is us trying to respond to what we're given and provide the best available information for a decision. As the walkers have pointed out, it sounds like Lot 2 may be the issue and not Lot 1. And the setbacks, clearly, neither property owner have a problem with the setbacks that we proposed. And so I think we've made some good ground tonight. If we can strike that condition of approval out of the decision that has to do with the 15-foot setback and just go with landscaping and good neighbor fencing, I think we meet the intent of the code and we provide some compatibility with the existing developments that are already in place out there. In terms of Lot 2, I am going to defer to Tim to talk to you a little bit about that, and I will provide some additional comments if you would like.
There are two dynamics that I'm dealing with in building a house on that lot, one of which is my compliance with my height restrictions that the code allows for. The code on a perfectly level lot, if I understand this correctly, is a maximum 30 feet. But that 30 feet varies as you're dealing with a slope or a side lot. The second dynamic is that I've always kind of intended to keep those houses at a low profile, at a low pitched roof, not the traditional steep pitch, the traditional style homes with steep pitched roofs. I think everybody is in agreement with that, especially to the benefit of keeping the ridge lines low on those upper 3 lots. The other dynamic is the grade difference between what my finished floor elevation is in relationship to what the walker's finished floor elevation is going to be. What I don't want to do is come off of my private drive and have an inverted driveway where I have water flowing down towards my garage. I want to try to keep that level. I want to keep my main floor elevation or plate elevation somewhere around 10 feet, not someplace around 10, maybe 11 feet. And I want to put a low pitch roof on there. So I think the grade difference between my finished floor of my house that we'll be building there and the finished floor elevation of the Walker's house, which is, as they defined at the top of their foundation, I believe it's somewhere around that 20 feet, maybe 25. So what I'm comfortable with is simply put a restriction on what my ridge height can be based on my curb, or the elevation of my approach, because that's what's the start of my driveway. My approach is at one elevation, and that my ridge height cannot exceed 20 feet. And I feel that's pretty safe to keep that ridge below what the Walker's finished floor elevation is going to be. Then we preserve that view, and that's on lot 2. But that reality is that really is going to apply to all 3 of those. Those are downsloping lots, and I'm going to have to deal with the same height restriction per the code. And I think that all 3 of those lots, as my best guess is that they're going to all be a main floor living with a basement, rec room, bedrooms underneath.
Yeah.
So I won't be going up 2 floors, and I don't intend to do that. So again, to preserve that view for the Walkers, specific to lot 2 would be to put a restriction not to exceed 20 feet to my ridge height from my approach elevation. And the approach elevation is defined on our grading map, gives an elevation of what that private drive is at the entrance to the approach. So that's elevation is set. We'd be building to that grade. So that would be my position on that. I don't have any problems. If my ridge, if my plate line's 10 feet and my ridge is 5 feet, I'm at 15 feet. You know, it's even better. So, and that's probably more realistic, but I don't want to commit myself to something that I'm going to be ending up setting the house down and having an inverted drive.
So can I ask a question on that, and what the difference is between setting the guideline at a number, at 20 feet, like you're proposing, versus the way that it was conditioned before, where it was really more of a variable, here's the top of your roof line, here's the bottom of their roof line. What is the difference between the two? And is it, again, just the concern that if the topography of that land right now would force you to build down? Or I'm not sure why couldn't we just take the existing condition that we have for lot 1, shift it to lot 2 and call it a day?
Well, the condition in lot 1 is in referencing a defined a view corridor. That view corridor that's defined on that
Alternative BC.
Yeah, alternative BC. And that's what we were showing that was right off the edge of lot 1. And now what the Walkers are suggesting is that's not a correct view corridor by accurate definition. It's more, the view corridor is more defined in a line with the rooftop on lot 2.
Right.
So if you define that as being the corridor, then I'm sorry, we're encroached, that whole house then is going to be encroached inside that corridor. So what was the?
Yeah, I don't think we want that. I don't think we want to move the view corridor over. And I think that I'm just impressed with your willingness to work with us on this whole thing. How if we convince the applicant to hold the clock another couple of weeks and they all got together and then we came back with something revised that had the lot 2 house condition fixed, because otherwise we have no problems here, except we have a house on lot 2 and Tim doesn't want to be, wants to maybe check his measurements first before he commits to something. I mean, are we working on something that we don't need to work on, and that Josh,
before you answer that,
please, can I add one comment?
Oh, yeah.
Steve Miller added some recommended language that would suggest that our limit would be defined by that our ridge height would not exceed the finished floor elevation of the Walker's house.
And that's what I'm asking, why can't we do that on lot 2 as well? Because that's what was on lot 1, correct?
He was recommending that on lot 1 based on the fact that we were defining the corridor.
yeah, except we want to not do an official.
So can we just take view corridor out of the language and just apply that to lot 2 as well? I mean, I'm not sure why we're.
So yes, to get to your question about just preserving the Planning Commission's recommendation and moving it from 1 to 2, no, we would not be comfortable with that, because again, they're only allowing us to build to the top of the elevation of our property. And that's just not practical. I mean, we would have a zero elevation.
Right, you'd
Well, I
do
think
1 foot.
A zero elevation, so.
Right, what-
recommendation.
Yeah, we don't want, I think the lot 1 issue, that's a done deal.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
gone.
but again,
I
we're
think
talking about transferring the condition to 2 now.
well, I think Sean is just saying, let's We have the same idea, the same idea. And I think Tim said it. You said the formula, right?
My only insecurities are going to be the unknowns of exactly what that elevation of their finished floor is.
Yeah.
But that's something that, you know, I feel pretty confident that that's a number that I can work with. I can work within.
Can you move the lot like house like 5 more feet
Well, as you
further
can see
east?
you can see the placement of that. The further I move that east, the further downhill.
Yeah.
And then I have a sloping inverted driveway that you're driving down into a garage. And we've done that before. It's not something that people necessarily like or care for.
I guess just my concern is when we're throwing out a figure of 20 feet, how do I know that that doesn't encroach in their view? I don't know. I don't know the land. I don't know. Yeah, what 20 feet looks like. So if we say it can't be higher than 20 feet, you build a 20-foot house, and now they've got their view blocked by 10 foot of house. What did we do?
Where we could say
Can I
a
make a
rooftop
comment
can't be
real
higher
quick?
than their.
Well, and that's what I was suggesting
I
first.
think I can help you with your thoughts.
Okay.
In my PowerPoint, I had a recommended condition of approval that was talking about on lot 1. Scratch lots 1, we'll move it to lot 2.
Yes.
And what it was saying is that the height of the home would not exceed the finished floor elevation of the walker's foundation. If we could make a little tweak to that to just say 20 feet or their elevation of their home, then I think we have it. So we can go 20 feet if that does not block it, but if 20 feet blocks it, then we can't exceed their foundation. And if we could craft a condition like that, I think we've done it.
Yeah, I think that's what, and I guess I'm stumbling through because it's 9:30 at night. That's what I meant to say by taking the conditions in lot 1 and moving them to lot 2. But
I just want to make sure we weren't talking about the planning commission recommendation.
Counselor, before you get going, I just kind of want to remind the council it's 9:30 and you have a rule if you're going to go past 9:30.
Don't we have to finish with this one item?
Finish this and then kind of, you know, make a motion to go another hour or something like that. Just
We're going to finish this, right?
We're going to finish.
You have other things on your agenda tonight, though.
Yeah.
No, that's all right.
We're close. We're so close.
I would like to finish this.
You can finish this, but before moving forward, you should address the
We have to
time.
do that.
So we need a motion?
I have a
Yes,
question.
do we have a motion?
Yeah, I make a
I just
motion.
have a question.
I have I do too.
Well, it's after 9:30. We have to, do we officially have
We
to
got to
say
finish
something
this
about the
agenda
time?
item
we finished this item.
before we
let's-
vote on the time.
Let's do
All right.
that.
After you're done with this, you still have a number of
Yeah, just a real quick one.
That's right.
Okay. So these look like cross sections, A prime, B prime. So where can we find those? That therein will lie our elevation differences between the foundation of where this home is and potentially the foundation of the Walker's residence. Right?
Page 216.
Yeah. What is it? 10?
Right, so going from just Google Earth on lot 1, our building, our existing elevation is 332 feet.
332?
And their home is at 351.
Oh. Okay, so you said 332, the elevation of the home on lot 2, the base.
The base.
No, I'm sorry, I was talking about the general area of where lot 1 is.
Oh, the topography?
1 or 2.
Right.
Oh, here we go.
I'm
looking
sorry,
at-
what I'm trying to get at is, we were focused on lot 1 because we thought that's where the view corridor was, so we put a lot of attention into that area. And there's about 20 feet of difference between where their home is and where our current elevation is for that land. You know, we're going to scrape it a little bit to get the road in there.
But that's lot 1.
Right, and we're going to do the same thing on lot 2 to get that
How,
road in.
how different is lot 1 to lot 2? Is it about the same? 2 feet?
I think lot 2 is about 2 feet higher in elevation.
It looks like it.
But
Based
still,
on
that
the
was what,
topography.
351?
But the 351 that we were
328.
using was a building pad elevation on their house because we don't honestly know what their finished floor elevation is. And we want to work from our finished floor to their finished floor.
Right.
As opposed to building pad to building pad.
But what is that? That's like,
So we were
32?
guessing 20 feet.
Right.
Yeah,
It looks, it sounds like you're
350.
within that.
Yeah, okay.
I had another question that the Walkers had a concern about trees in the backyard of lot 2 being no higher than the roof line, so that also doesn't block their view. Is that something that's manageable?
Well, you have to consider the fact that lot 2 has the same view out of the backyard of their house as the Walkers do.
Right.
So we're not going to
Block your
do
view.
anything more damaging to our view than what we would, or they would do to their view, or what we would want to do to their view either. So any trees that we're going to be planting, we're going to be guided somewhat by the requirements of planting street trees by the city. or maybe rear yard trees, but we're not going to do something that's going to condemn us in blocking our view out of our house either, so.
Talking about that area between your home and the Walkers.
And
Oh, that buffered area?
15 feet for a buffer.
I have a question. So how does this affect what Planning Commission has recommended all these different things to us, and now we're asking to make changes to this? How does this affect the situation?
That's a great question, and Councilor Griffin asked me a question a little while back.
Yes.
I think that that's a good segue to that, which is we have a Planning Commission recommendation. We have a lot of modifications to that recommendation that have been discussed. It sounds like we're pretty close to having something that everyone can agree with. The best practice would probably not try to do this on the fly during this meeting tonight. And if the applicant would agree to extend the 120 days just until we can bring this back at the next council meeting on March 20th, and in that interim time period, develop these changes to the conditions and make sure everybody's okay with them,
Yes.
and then council could be confident that they're approving something that is what they want to be approved.
And my response to that is simply, we still have a lot of time constraints in front of us. So the longer we push this out, for instance, after the March 10th hearing, we'll have a 14-day appeal period. We have to submit for our plan review. They have a 30-day review completeness period. I mean, there's just week after week after week. And my concern is the further this gets pushed into the summer, I'm losing my 3-month window of opportunity to develop this property during the summer, during the warm months. And if I can't start construction because my permits have just been delayed and get pushed out, then I'm next summer I lose a year, and I'm sensitive to that. I'm concerned. And I'm going to be moving a lot of dirt, dealing with a lot of DEQ issues and cleaning the site. And we're going to be doing a lot of grading. That's a 12% grade on Denali. So that has to be done during the winter or the summer months.
So is this something we can discuss here tonight as far as there are a couple conditions that we talked about that I think we've gotten close on, right? I mean, the buffer, when I say something silly, stop me because I'm going to make some assumptions here. I don't think there's a huge appetite from the council to take the Planning Commission's buffer and implement that with this. I don't think we feel that that's necessary because we've had
not after the testimony from both.
After the testimony we have from both, and I think that it's covered. We need to figure out what this height for Lot 2 is going to look like. So that needs to be modified and what's going to come back. And I think that's it, right? I mean, there's the issue of the trees, but I think from a common sense standpoint, I agree that they're not going to build a new home with views of Mount Hood and block the views of Mount Hood with trees. So I don't know that we necessarily need to.
I think it needs to be memorialized because property owners will always plant trees that will grow to who knows how long. I think it needs to be
I think the recommendation was
memorialized
an
in some
HOA.
way. Yeah.
And I think it's the trees behind the house between the two properties that I think is the concerns coming from for the walkers, not the street trees which are down the hill.
Right. Yep.
And then we've got the other family as well.
Right.
Yeah, the Haughtons. Right. Lot 4, yes, the side views.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a suggestion, just as a suggestion, because you've been going for a while. If you take a very short break, potentially, it may give you an opportunity to craft some language that you can propose. If you want to talk to your neighbors, you can. And if we can get this done tonight, I think that's probably the preference for everybody based on what you're saying. Now, that may not be the preference of the council, but
I'm motivated. I don't know about you guys, but I'm motivated to get it done.
Let's take a few minutes and absolutely let them do that.
Yeah.
It's better than, we'd rather get it done tonight.
Okay, good.
Before we go into recess, I just want to make sure we've identified what all of the issues are. Was there an issue, am I remembering or misremembering with the design book? With what the Planning Commission had conditioned with regard to the types of elevations?
I think they've agreed and removed the.
You don't have any issue with any of those?
The Planning Commission made some recommendations. Honestly, what we submitted a plan book at the first planning hearing. They made recommendations at that planning hearing. We made some corrections to that book. Unfortunately, the book with the corrections did not get submitted for the second Planning Commission hearing, and so damage was done. We were caught without having properly submitted the right book. So we have made those corrections that were recommended in the plan book or the pattern book, and we have resubmitted it
Right.
this application here.
Okay.
So that's
I think Joy referenced that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got that. We got
So
the
it's
buffer.
the
right?
striking the buffer condition,
Right.
addressing the height issue on lot 2, tree issues in the CCNRs.
Right.
And then with the conditions on lot 1, probably just, well, striking that or coming up with
Moot.
something. Right. It sounds like it's moved.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's make it easy.
And if I may, for Councilor Browson, I know the Planning Commission will appreciate the sentiment and the concern because the Planning Commission does spend a lot of time and energy. They had 2 hearings, very lengthy discussion. But they also understand that new testimony comes up. It's essentially a de novo hearing. And so it is not abnormal, as Councilor Griffin can attest, it's not abnormal for the council to make modifications, again, based on that additional testimony.
It's actually quite amusing to be on this side of it, actually. Now I know what it feels like on both sides.
So if we recess, then before we recess, we needed to make a motion to extend our meeting, correct? Okay.
Okay.
So did we cover everything then? Is anybody thinking we missed anything?
I move
Are you
that-
guys okay talking for a few minutes and
So
drafting some
We're
language?
really addressing the
Lot 2 height.
Lot 2, and then CCNR.
and
Trees.
Tree.
On lot 4.
Yeah.
Tree obstructions.
Yep. We can take care of the
So
rest.
you, 5 minutes or so, 8 minutes?
What do you think? What do you guys?
Can you do it in 5?
We'll move quick. We'll move quick.
Okay.
Recess.
Recess, 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Back to order. I believe we have an amendment for our hearing.
So what I would recommend is we do have, I believe, agreed upon revisions, and Erica has written that all down. And if she can read into the record kind of what we believe, if you were to make a motion to take the Planning Commission's recommendation with these specific amendments, I believe that everybody
Simplest.
would be agreeable.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So we're going to be modifying condition A13. And A13, the new condition will read, no part of any structure on lot 2 shall exceed the finished floor elevation of the existing structure to the west. Okay. And then we are striking condition B14 and B15. And then we are including another condition, which would be A15, and it would read, the applicant shall provide CC&Rs to restrict tree height on lots 2, 3, 4, and 5. To develop CC&Rs to restrict the tree height on lots 2, 3, and 4, and 5 to be not limited to more than 15 feet. And
To a maximum of 15 feet.
Maximum, thank you.
Let's read it one more time. Just so we have it. The applicant will submit CC&Rs.
The applicant shall submit CC&Rs to restrict the tree height on lots 2, 3, 4, and 5 for a maximum tree height of 15 feet.
So I think they're talking about street trees, and we actually discussed that. The street trees actually aren't on the lots, they're in the right-of-way, so that would not apply to street trees.
Correct.
And I think that they're far enough down the grade that wouldn't necessarily be a concern, although we don't know, but.
And they would not be obstructing of the house in Sherwood Estates on lot 4.
Okay. Right.
Most street trees are no higher than 20.
And the street that we're referring to at this point is Denali, right?
Treat trees.
Yes. On my street.
Have some more of that Pepsi.
Okay, so just to clarify on, we're striking B14.
I've got it right here. Striking 14, 15, adding a 15, A15.
But 14 wasn't any part of the conditions originally. I mean, it is. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
By the final development, the applicant shall revise the view corridor section.
And then we're changing A13.
A13.
So there's literally one change, one addition, and then one strike.
Two strikes.
Two strikes.
Two strikes.
Okay.
Correct.
And then I guess where we're at right now is clearly we still have the public hearing open because we're still discussing, but if you're ready to close the public hearing, then you would close the public hearing and then deliberate. And you certainly can still ask questions of staff if you need us to reread things or something like that.
Okay. The public hearing is now closed. Discussion?
I think we're good. Yeah, I agree. We made some really
Everybody's
great
good.
progress tonight.
Can we have a motion for the approval of the amendment?
I got it.
Got it? You
Yeah.
gotta
Go for it.
I make a motion that we approve Denali Lane PUD 17-0. Wait, I got the right one there. Is that it? 17-01 sub 17-01. Is that it? Julie, is that right? Okay. With the modifications to the Planning Commission's recommendations being a revision of condition A13, the striking B14, B15, and additional new condition regarding CC&Rs and street trees, which is A15.
Second.
Sylvia, you call for a vote?
Yes, so just a procedure question for Josh. So at this point, it's an amendment. Do they need to adopt the amendment and then adopt as amended, or just one motion?
Yes.
We're not amending the ordinance, we're amending the recommendations.
Recommendation.
From Planning
Okay, so at this point,
Commission.
it'd just be one vote?
Yes, just one vote.
Thank you. Ordinance 2014-004, approving a planned unit development PUD to be known as the Denali Lane Planned Unit Development and Subdivision. Councilor Rosner?
Aye.
Councilor Griffin?
Aye.
Councilor Browse?
Aye.
Councilor Young?
Aye.
Councilor Kuiper?
Aye.
Council President Garland?
Aye.
Mayor Weislovel?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for
guys.
coming and helping us
everybody.
do that.
Thanks for hanging with us.
Everybody in the room, thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
working together.
Happy neighboring.
Yes. And thank you to staff. Thank you, staff, for helping us with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
So, Mayor, just as a reminder, before you discuss any other items that are still on the agenda, we're past 9:30, so I'd like you to consider a motion to extend the meeting for a certain amount of time.
I move we extend the meeting till 10:30.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is 5G, and that will be led in the discussion by Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. So hopefully this will be super quick because I know it's all getting late. I talked to Joe about this afternoon and Councilor Kuiper for a little bit, and we were just hoping that, and Councilor, you might have some questions too, but the intent of me taking that off the consent agenda was more so we could have a conversation about it in the next work session, not to delay it. I'm more interested in the language around that, and can we amend that contract at a future date to make it a more wider, all-encompassing community visioning process that goes outside just the comprehensive plan, which I think is what you're intending right now for that particular contract.
Answer the intention of the contract.
Okay, so we absolutely are happy to talk about that
Yeah.
at the next meeting at a work session. Just so you know, timing-wise, we would like to start the visioning. We've already kicked off the comprehensive plan process. We are planning on going to the Citizen Advisory Committee again in April. And we also have the Housing Needs Analysis and Economic Opportunities Analysis grant that we received. So delaying things will just delay things a little bit more. If we were to totally redo everything and start with a true community-wide visioning rather than this comprehensive plan vision, you're really delaying the comprehensive plan update by about a year.
Well, and I think Councilor Risner said he thought that was what you wanted, but I thought the emails I read said this was supposed to be a more focused, not meant to be a more wide. Correct? So,
It is more wide.
oh, but Tim, you made it sound like that's what they wanted.
No,
but
no. What I'm suggesting is you're exactly right. What I'm suggesting is if we were to widen that into we made a decision down the road as we look at Sherwood West and all this other stuff to do a wider process with the community that looks not just at the silo of the comprehensive plan, but across public safety and all of the different services and organizations in the city. That's what I was suggesting. I wanted to make sure, can we add that at a future date?
And the short answer to that is no, unfortunately. Because of the dollar value of the contract, we have to do a competitive RFP process to solicit that contract. We've already done that process, and this is the recommended award. If we wanted to do a wider ranging contract,
that's a different contract.
Another RFP.
Different deal.
This contract was specifically to do the consulting
for the comprehensive plan.
The community vision for the comprehensive plan.
Could we? So if we go through this process, could we build upon that in a wider process?
Yeah, and that's what we have envisioned. So, it is very normal to do a community-wide visioning process, and then that feeds into a comprehensive plan process. But that wasn't done. The comprehensive plan was really high priority. And so we knew we needed to do some visioning. We can't do a comprehensive plan without reaching out to the public and kind of finding out where they want to grow as a community. So what we did an RFP for was essentially a comprehensive plan vision, but we fully expect that through that process, there are going to be issues that bubble up that will be part of a community-wide vision. So we believe it will be, as I was talking to Joe, it will be a pillar of the community-wide vision. I don't think it will be drastically, I don't think we're going to go through this process and then go through a community-wide visioning process and have something drastically different. I think it will really build upon it. But if you want to step back and do that bigger visioning process, you really can't be doing that while you're also doing a comprehensive plan update. You really need to do that first. And the difference, basically what the community-wide visioning is it's everything. It's programming, schools. It's really kind of what we as a whole community, religious institutions, nonprofits, those types of things. That's really what you're looking at the community-wide visioning, as opposed to what we're really looking at with the comprehensive plan, which is really kind of community development, certainly touching on parks and open spaces and things like that, but more at the realm that the city actually has control over. Does that make sense?
So the reason why I'd sent an email to you, Julia, was that had been my understanding when we talked months ago. But when I had read the staff report and then attached to the staff report, there was a scope of work. And when I started reading the scope of work, it sounded so all-encompassing and broad that I thought, wow, are we really getting that much for a $70,000 contract? So I wanted to just double check to find out exactly, were we still being focused on comp plan, and if at some point we could expand upon that. And it sounds like not without going through another contracting process. And I was thinking maybe, I'm not sure what the state allows for contracting with cities. Is it $25K without having to go through an RFP, or $50K without having to go through an RFP process? But I'm assuming that a community-wide visioning would be a much larger lift than just an additional $50K anyway. Is that right? Okay. All right. Thanks.
So we can still do that at some later date. It's kind of like we're doing a little bit backwards, but we can still do it.
We can still do it. Like you said, it will inform the process moving forward. So what we get with this focus study will inform what we're going to do the next steps. Exactly. Right. Okay.
So yeah, I think it's not ideal the way we're doing it, but I think I'm certainly in favor of moving ahead with the comprehensive plan update as we've set as the goal. So
On those words, could we have a motion?
I move that we move forward. I don't have it in front of me.
I
move that we read.
It's right here.
Is he approving resolution?
So we're just passing this as
We're just passing the resolution.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we help me out here. I'm following.
I move resolution.
I move resolution 2018-022, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with 3J Consulting to prepare a community vision for the comprehensive plan update and prepare a comprehensive plan integration strategy.
A second?
It's her first time. Go easy on her. So.
It's not, though. That's
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Renee.
We'll give Renee the credit for seconding.
The mayor and I both.
Somebody did down there.
You get that a lot.
No problem. City manager report.
Will be brief. So I have two items. Just a reminder that a week from today is Election Day here in Sherwood. Ballots can be dropped off at any ballot drop-off in the county, but certainly the most convenient one is right in our parking lot. 8 o'clock next Tuesday night. There are races not only for the mayor's seat and 2 council seats, but there is also an important TVF&R annexation issue on the ballot. So I wanted to remind folks of those races for next Tuesday. I also wanted to provide an opportunity for Chief Growth. We got some good news once again about how we rank in the state of Oregon in terms of crime stats, and I'll let Chief go from there. So, Chief?
So you'll see this on our Facebook page as well as our Twitter feed, but an alarm and security research group did this study, and we can't finish second of cities in Oregon, safe cities in Oregon, mostly because of our extremely low violent crime rate, which is below, it's at 0.67, I think per 1,000 is the way it figures out. But anyway, Canby beat us out because they have a lower property crime rate. So it's a formula they use. So we ended up in second place because of our property crime rate. So if you have to choose between one of the two, that would certainly be the better option. But so anyway, very happy about that. So
Congratulations and thank you.
Yes.
You can see that on our Facebook page.
That's great. Okay, thank you. Council announcements?
Super short. Parks meeting was last night, and the first instance of the YMCA sending the representative, Martin, came and talked and kind of opened that door, and we had a nice discussion, the Parks Board and Martin, of that first meeting. That's about it. Nothing else, really. That's it.
Pass.
I'll just make a quick announcement. We've had some openings on the Police Advisory Board and the Planning Commission. I'm glad to see that we had quite a few applicants so far for both of those. So thank you for everybody out there who is willing to serve in our city government. So that's all. Thanks.
And the only thing I have is, I think everybody's familiar with Eva, who's been our county library overseer, and she's retiring after 27 years. And our library director and I went to her retirement in Hillsborough. It was an awesome event, and they're looking for a replacement, and it might not be that easy to find right away.
Just one real brief announcement. I'm the liaison for the Friends of the Refuge, and on Saturday we're going to be doing an all-day SWOT analysis on the refuge, and I'm really hoping that the Friends are going to start to get more involved with the city. They really want to, and they're a great group of people, and I'm actually really looking forward to participating. Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a whole bunch of announcements, but I'm just going to skip them tonight. I'll take care of them next time.
I think I'm going to do the same.
Hey, Mayor, can I just put one more plug in? So I wanted to mention that the Sherwood Foundation for the Arts is doing Hello Dolly this summer. And this week, Thursday and Friday, are auditions. If anyone wants to still audition, Erica, audition for Hello Dolly.
No
It's this Thursday and this Friday. You can go to the website and sign up. They have a Sign Up Genius link. So I'll be there judging, so be careful.
Do you have to sing?
The meeting is adjourned. Are we still having